After dropping my daughter at the subway station on a freezing Chicago night, my groundskeeper, who has worked for us for 10 silent years, called me. His voice was not the polite murmur I was used to. It was a command. "Sir, come home now. Kill your headlights before you turn into the driveway. Do not use the front gate. You need to see this, and whatever you do, do not let Gavin see you." When I got home, I crept through my own backyard like a thief. Cyrus led me to the basement door that my son-in-law had kept locked for months. What was inside left me completely stunned and made me realize that the man sleeping next to my daughter was not just a leech, he was a monster. I am Ezekiel Freeman, but everyone calls me Zeke. At 74 years old, I have calluses on my hands that are older than the fancy Italian loafers my son-in-law Gavin wears. I built half the skyline of this city, pouring concrete and laying steel when men who looked like me were told to stay on the ground. I made $50 million the hard way, but tonight, none of that money could stop the cold shiver running down my spine. Before I tell you what I found in that basement, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to protect your family from a snake that you let into your own house. It was 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night. The wind was howling off the lake, rattling the frame of my old Ford pickup truck. I have a garage full of luxury cars that Gavin loves to drive, but I prefer my truck. It smells like sawdust and hard work. My daughter Nia sat in the passenger seat, nervously checking her watch. She is 32 years old, a brilliant lawyer, but when she looks at me, I still see the little girl with ribbons in her hair who used to bring me lunch at the construction site. "Thanks for the ride, Daddy," she said, adjusting her scarf. Her car had broken down again. A brand new Mercedes that seemed to have electrical problems every other week. Gavin promised to take it to the shop, but he was always too busy with his venture capital meetings. "You sure you do not want me to wait?" I asked her. This subway station isn't the safest place at night, especially not for a girl wearing a coat that costs more than most people's rent. "No, Daddy. I will be fine," she said, leaning over to kiss my cheek. "I have to meet a client downtown for an emergency deposition. Gavin is waiting up for me at home. You go get some sleep. You look tired." I watched her walk down the concrete stairs, her heels clicking against the pavement. I felt a knot in my stomach. A father's instinct is a powerful thing. It does not fade with age. It gets sharper. I waited until she disappeared underground before I put the truck in gear. I turned the radio down and drove slowly through the city streets. My mind was heavy. Lately, things in my house felt wrong. My wife Ruby was forgetting things. Small things at first, like where she put her glasses or the name of our neighbor. But lately it was getting worse. And Gavin, my son-in-law, was always there hovering over her with a sympathetic smile that never quite reached his eyes. He is a handsome man, I will give him that. 35 years old, white blue eyes, always talking about social justice and equality. He calls me a pioneer. He says he respects my journey, but I see the way he looks at my rough hands when we are at dinner. He looks at me like I am a lucky savage who stumbled onto a gold mine. I was 3 blocks away from my estate when my phone rang. It was a private number. I almost didn't answer. I pressed the button and put it to my ear. "Hello? Mr. Freeman?" The voice was low, gravelly. It was Cyrus. Cyrus has been my groundskeeper and head of security for a decade. A big man, dark skin, missing the ring finger on his left hand. He lives in the guest cottage behind the main house. He keeps the hedges perfect and he never speaks unless spoken to. In 10 years, I do not think I have heard him say more than 10 words at a time. "Cyrus, what is it? Is Ruby?" "Okay, Ruby is asleep, sir. Listen to me carefully. Where are you?" "I am turning onto the main road." "Stop. Do not come in the main gate." "Gavin is in the living room watching the security feeds. If he sees your truck lights, he will close the room." "What room, Cyrus? What are you talking about?" "Kill your headlights, Mr. Freeman. Drive around the back alley. Enter through the service gate. I disabled the sensor. Park behind the tool shed. Come to the basement entrance. Now." The line went dead. My heart hammered against my ribs. Cyrus was not a man of drama. He was a man of facts. If he told me to kill my lights, there was a reason. I pulled over to the curb and switched off the headlamps. The street was dark, lit only by the moon. I eased the truck forward, rolling slowly on the asphalt. I felt ridiculous sneaking into my own home. I paid for every brick of this mansion. I paid for the iron gates. I paid for the security system that Cyrus was warning me about. But the urgency in his voice pushed me forward. I navigated the back alley, guiding the truck by memory. I parked behind the shed where the shadows were deepest. The air was biting cold when I stepped out. I did not slam the door. I pushed it shut until it clicked softly. I saw a shadow detach itself from the darkness near the rose bushes. It was Cyrus. He was wearing black coveralls and holding a heavy flashlight that looked more like a weapon. "Follow me," he whispered. We walked across the lawn. The grass was wet with frost. I looked up at the main house. The living room window was glowing. I could see the silhouette of Gavin pacing back and forth holding a glass of wine. He looked like the lord of the manor. Cyrus led me to the storm doors that opened directly into the basement. Gavin had claimed this basement 6 months ago. He told us he needed a quiet space for his home office, a place to store his rare wine collection. He put a biometric lock on the door. He said it was to protect client confidentiality. Nia thought it was reasonable. I thought it was arrogant, but I let it slide to keep the peace. Cyrus knelt by the lock. He pulled a small device from his pocket and attached it to the keypad. Numbers flashed rapidly on the small screen. "How do you know how to do that, Cyrus?" I asked quietly. "I used to do a lot of things before I planted roses, sir," he muttered. Click. The lock disengaged. He pulled the heavy doors open, and we descended into the darkness. The air down here was cool and smelled of ozone and electronics, not wine. Cyrus switched on his flashlight, keeping the beam low to the floor. "Prepare yourself, Mr. Freeman," he said. We walked past the racks of wine bottles that were just for show. At the back of the room, behind a large oak shelf, there was a false wall. I had built this house. I knew every inch of it. There was no room behind here on the original blueprints. Gavin had built this without me knowing. Cyrus found a hidden latch under one of the shelves. The bookcase swung open silently on well-oiled hinges. Light spilled out. I stepped inside and my breath caught in my throat. It was not an office. It was a command center. 3 walls were covered in high-definition monitors. Servers hummed with a low, menacing vibration. Wires snaked across the floor like black vipers. I walked toward the screens, my legs feeling heavy as lead. On the center screen was a live feed of my bedroom. I could see my wife Ruby sleeping in her bed, her chest rising and falling rhythmically. The camera was high quality, likely hidden in the smoke detector. On the left screen was Nia's bathroom. My stomach turned. On the right screen was the kitchen. But it was not just video. There were audio waveforms bouncing on a smaller monitor. I leaned in closer. I saw a file named Dining Room Table Audio. I looked at Cyrus. He nodded. He pressed a key on the keyboard. A voice filled the room. It was my voice recorded from dinner 2 nights ago. "I don't trust the market right now, Gavin. I think I will keep the capital in the trust fund for another year." Then Gavin's voice recorded clearly. "Whatever you say, Zeke, you are the boss." But then the recording continued after I had left the table. The sound of silverware clinking. And then Gavin speaking to someone on the phone. "The old man is holding on to the money. Yeah, he is stubborn. But don't worry. The doctor says the medication is working. He is already forgetting things. Give it another month. We will have the conservatorship by Christmas." I stared at the screen. My hands were shaking not from age but from a rage so hot it felt like it could melt steel. Medication. I looked at Cyrus. "What medication?" Cyrus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small orange pill bottle. He handed it to me. "I found this in the trash can in Gavin's private bathroom," he said. "The label is peeled off. But I had it analyzed. It is not a vitamin supplement like he tells your wife to give you. It is a high-dose sedative mixed with a hallucinogen. It causes memory loss, confusion, and paranoia." I gripped the bottle until the plastic cracked. "He is drugging me," I whispered. "He is drugging you," Sir Cyrus said, his face grim. "And he is drugging Mrs. Ruby too. Look at the map." He pointed to a large whiteboard in the corner covered with a tarp. Cyrus pulled the tarp down. My blood ran cold. It was a timeline. At the top it said Project Sunset. There were photos of me, photos of Nia, and photos of my bank accounts. There were dates and milestones. Phase 1 isolation, Phase 2 public incident, Phase 3 conservatorship. Next to Phase 2 there was a date, today's date, and a note written in red marker. Subway drop-off. I looked at the date again. Today. "Why would he write about the subway drop-off?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Nia asked me to take her. Her car broke down." Cyrus typed quickly on the keyboard. He pulled up a video file from a folder marked Evidence. It was a recording from the garage security camera. The timestamp was 2 hours ago. I watched Gavin walking around Nia's Mercedes. He was holding a pair of wire cutters. He reached under the hood. A spark flew. He wiped his hands on a rag and smiled. "He cut the wires," I said. "He wanted her to ask you for a ride," Cyrus said, "and he wanted you to drop her at that specific station." Look at the next file. Cyrus opened a live police scanner feed. There was a report filed 20 minutes ago. An anonymous tip. Report of an elderly African-American male in a confused state abandoning a young woman at the MLK subway station. Subject appears disoriented and aggressive. Vehicle plate matches Ezekiel Freeman. He is setting me up, I realized. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. He did not just want to steal my money, he wanted to destroy my mind. He wanted to paint me as a senile, dangerous old man so he could legally take control of everything I built. I looked at the monitors again. I saw myself on the screen standing in this room. Wait, I said. Is this live? Cyrus froze. He looked at the camera lens in the corner of the room. A tiny red light blinked. He knows we are here, Cyrus said. Suddenly, the heavy steel door behind us slammed shut. The electronic lock engaged with a loud mechanical thud. The lights in the basement flickered and went out, leaving us in the darkness lit only by the glow of the monitors. Then Gavin's voice came over the intercom system, loud and distorted. Welcome home, Zeke. I was wondering when you would find your way down here. Make yourself comfortable. The police are already on their way. I told them you broke into the house and you have a weapon. I stood there in the dark, my hand gripping the pill bottle. I looked at Cyrus. He didn't look scared. He reached into his boot and pulled out a pry bar. We are not done yet, Sir Cyrus said. I looked up at the camera, my eyes adjusting to the gloom. No Gavin, I thought. We are just getting started. You think you trapped a rat, but you just locked yourself in a cage with a lion. The hum of the computer servers was the only sound in the basement, a low vibrating drone that felt like a swarm of bees trapped inside the walls. My eyes were still adjusting to the blue light coming from the wall of monitors, but my mind was racing, trying to piece together the nightmare I had just walked into. Cyrus moved with the silence of a ghost, his heavy boots making no sound on the concrete floor as he walked toward the far corner of the room where a large whiteboard stood covered by a gray painter's tarp. I stood in the center of the room feeling like a stranger in my own home. This was the space where I used to store my tools, my vintage wines, the things I had collected over 50 years of hard labor. Now it looked like the inside of a spy agency. My workbenches were gone, replaced by sleek black desks. My tool cabinets were gone, replaced by server racks. Gavin had not just renovated the room, he had colonized it. Cyrus reached for the corner of the tarp. His hand hesitated for a split second, and he looked back at me. The look in his eyes was not pity. It was the look a soldier gives his commander before they walk into an ambush. Brace yourself, sir, he said, his voice barely a whisper. He pulled the tarp down in one smooth motion. The white surface of the board was covered in red and black marker ink. It was a diagram, a flowchart. It looked exactly like the construction schedules I used to draw up for skyscrapers. But instead of concrete and steel beams, this plan was built on lies and manipulation. At the very top, in bold red letters, were two words: Project Sunset. It sounded like a retirement community or a vacation package. But as my eyes scanned down the board, I realized it was a battle plan, and the enemy was me. In the center of the board was a photo of me. It wasn't a flattering photo. It was taken with a telephoto lens from a distance, probably a few weeks ago. I was sitting on a park bench looking down at my shoes. In the photo, I looked frail, confused, lost. I remembered that day. I wasn't confused. I was just tired after a long walk and I had stopped to tie my shoelace. But the way the picture was cropped, the way the lighting hit my face, it made me look like I didn't know where I was. Next to the photo was a word that made my stomach turn over: dementia. And below that a list of symptoms: confusion, aggression, memory loss, wandering. Check marks were placed next to each one. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I have never had memory loss. I can tell you the price of steel in 1982. I can tell you the name of every foreman I ever hired. I can recite the building codes for the entire state of Illinois from memory. My mind is the only thing I have that is truly mine. And he was planning to take it away. My eyes moved to the right side of the board. There was a financial breakdown. Total assets, $52 million. Real estate holdings, $30 million. Liquid cash, $12 million. Stocks and bonds, $10 million. And then the goal, the end game, written in black capital letters: conservatorship. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Conservatorship. I knew what that meant. It meant I would lose the right to sign checks. I would lose the right to drive. I would lose the right to decide where I lived or who I saw. I would become a child in the eyes of the law. and Gavin would become my father. He didn't just want my money, he wanted to own me. He wanted to enslave me in my own house using the legal system as his whip. Step 1. Cyrus said, pointing to a box on the left side of the diagram. The box was labeled Public Incident. Inside the box was today's date and the words Subway Drop Off. I stared at the words and the pieces finally clicked into place. The breakdown of Nia's car, the specific request for a ride, the choice of the subway station, which was in a high-crime area poorly lit and covered in graffiti. It wasn't an accident, it was a scene in a movie he was directing. Cyrus turned back to the computer console and typed a command. The center monitor flickered and a new video feed appeared. It was footage from the subway station security cameras. Gavin must have hacked into the city's feed or paid someone off. The angle was high, looking down at the curb where I had dropped Nia off. I watched myself on the screen. I saw my truck pull up. I saw Nia get out. But then I saw something I hadn't noticed in the moment. As soon as Nia closed the door, she didn't walk into the station. She stood on the curb and looked back at the truck. She looked scared. She looked abandoned. She held her arms around herself as if she was freezing. From the camera's perspective, it didn't look like a father dropping off his daughter for a meeting. It looked like an old man kicking a young woman out of his car in the middle of the night. And then on the screen, I saw myself drive away, the taillights of my truck fading into the darkness, leaving her there alone. See the timestamp, Cyrus said, pointing at the corner of the screen. 10:13 p.m. Now look at this. He pulled up a text message log on the screen. It was a conversation between Gavin and a contact named Dr. Cyrus. 10:15 p.m. Gavin texts, "The Eagle has landed. Incident occurred. Footage secured. She looks terrified." Perfect. 10:16 p.m. Dr. Cyrus replies, "Excellent. This establishes the pattern of erratic behavior. We can argue he endangered her safety due to cognitive decline. I will prepare the medical file." I felt a roar building up in my chest, a sound that started deep in my gut and clawed its way up my throat. It was the sound of a man who realizes the person he welcomed into his family, the man he shared his Thanksgiving turkey with, was actually a butcher sharpening his knife. He used her. I growled, my voice sounding unrecognizable even to myself. He used my daughter as a prop. He put her in danger just to get a video clip of me. He didn't care if she got mugged. He didn't care if she froze. He only cared about the narrative. I looked around the room, desperate for something to break. My eyes landed on a glass display case near the back wall. Inside was a baseball bat signed by Jackie Robinson. It was a gift Gavin had bought for himself with my money, a trophy he liked to show off to his rich white friends. I walked over to the case. I didn't bother looking for the key. I smashed my elbow into the glass. Shards rained down on the floor. I didn't feel the cuts. I reached in and grabbed the heavy wooden bat. It felt good in my hands. Solid. Real. Unlike everything else in this room, it was honest. "I am going upstairs," I said, turning toward the door. I gripped the handle of the bat so tight my knuckles turned white. "I am going to wake him up, and I am going to show him exactly how much cognitive decline I have." I took a step toward the door, my heart pounding like a pile driver. I could see it in my mind. The look on his face when I smashed that door down. The fear in his eyes when he realized the old man wasn't helpless. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to make him bleed for what he was doing to my name and my family. But before I could take another step, a heavy hand clamped onto my shoulder. It was Cyrus. He didn't pull me back. He just held me there, rooting me to the spot with his strength. "Let me go, Cyrus," I warned him, low and dangerous. "No." Sir Cyrus said, his voice calm and steady like a stone in a river. I turned on him, raising the bat slightly. "Do not get in my way. You saw what he is doing. He is erasing me. If you go up there with that bat," Cyrus said, looking me dead in the eye, "you are doing exactly what he wants." I paused, breathing hard. "Look at the board." Sir Cyrus gestured to the plan with his free hand. "Look at the symptoms he wants to prove. Aggression, violence, confusion. If you go up there and crack his skull, you are handing him the keys to the kingdom. The police will come. He will show them the bruises. He will show them the crazy old man who attacked him in the middle of the night. You will be in a cell by sunrise, and he will have his conservatorship signed by lunch." I lowered the bat an inch, the truth of his words sinking in like a cold rain. "He wants you to lose your temper," Cyrus continued. "That is the trap. He is poking the bear, waiting for you to roar so he can put you in a cage. I looked at the bat in my hand. Then I looked at the screen where Gavin was still pacing in the living room, sipping his wine, waiting for the police to bring home the confused old man. So what do? I asked, my voice cracking with frustration. Do I just let him win? Do I let him paint me as a vegetable while he steals everything I built? No, Cyrus said. He took the bat from my hand, gently but firmly. We don't fight him with wood. We fight him with this. He tapped his temple with his index finger. He thinks you are losing your mind. He thinks you are weak. He thinks you are yesterday's news. Cyrus turned back to the computer and closed the video feed, leaving only the desktop background glowing blue. We are going to let him think he is right. We are going to let him believe his plan is working perfectly. We are going to feed him the rope inch by inch until he ties the noose around his own neck. Cyrus leaned in closer, his face illuminated by the cold light of the screens. You don't kill a snake by hitting its tail, Mr. Freeman. It will just bite you. If you want to kill a snake, you have to wait until it rears up to strike. And then you cut off the head. I looked at my hands, the hands that had built skyscrapers. They were trembling, not from fear anymore, but from adrenaline. Cyrus was right. Violence was the tool of a desperate man. I was not desperate. I was Ezekiel Freeman. I had outsmarted segregationists, union busters, and corrupt city inspectors. I could outsmart a 35-year-old venture capitalist with a god complex. Put the bat back, I said, straightening my flannel shirt. We have work to do. Cyrus nodded, a rare ghost of a smile touching his lips. Yes, sir. But first, we need to get you out of here. The police are 5 minutes away, and when they find you, you need to be exactly where Gavin expects you to be. Where is that? Lost Cyrus said. You need to be lost, because tonight is the opening night of the greatest performance of your life. The morning sun hit the marble countertops of my kitchen with a brightness that felt offensive. After spending half the night in the dark basement, uncovering the plot against my life, the daylight felt like a spotlight in an interrogation room. I stood in the hallway for a moment, adjusting the collar of my flannel shirt. My heart was pounding a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I had to remind myself to breathe. I had to remind myself to slouch. I had to remind myself to let my hands tremble just a little bit. For 74 years, I have walked with my head high. I walked tall when I was a foreman on construction sites, surrounded by men who hated the color of my skin. I walked tall when I walked into bank lobbies to ask for loans that I knew they did not want to give me. But today I had to shrink. Today I had to become the confused old man that my son-in-law Gavin wanted me to be. I walked into the kitchen. The smell of roasted coffee and bacon filled the air, but my stomach turned. Gavin was already sitting at the head of the table. My table. The table I carved from a single slab of walnut wood 30 years ago. He was wearing a crisp navy blue suit, checking emails on his phone while he picked at a plate of scrambled eggs. He looked up as I entered. His smile was instant and terrifyingly bright. It was the smile of a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. "Good morning, Zeke," he said, his voice dripping with a concern that was as fake as the sweetener he put in his coffee. "You slept late today. Everything okay?" I shuffled to my chair, pulling it out slowly. The legs of the chair scraped against the floor, and I saw Gavin wince slightly. He hated noise. He hated mess. He hated anything that wasn't perfectly curated for his image. "I didn't sleep well," I mumbled, keeping my eyes on the placemat. "Bad dreams." Gavin put his phone down. He clasped his hands together and leaned forward. The performance was beginning. "I am not surprised you had bad dreams, Dad," he said, soft and low. "Nia called me last night. She was really worried about you." I froze with my coffee cup halfway to my mouth. I let the cup rattle against the saucer. A nice touch, I thought. Worried, I asked. "Why?" "I just gave her a ride." Gavin sighed. It was a long-suffering sigh, the kind a parent gives an unruly child. "Dad, she said you dropped her off at the MLK station. Do you know what time that was? It was after 10 o'clock. And that neighborhood. It is not safe. She said you seemed confused about where you were going. She said you almost drove onto the sidewalk when you pulled away." Lies. All lies. I drove that truck with the precision of a surgeon, but I knew what the camera footage looked like. I knew the angle he had set up. I don't remember that," I stammered. I thought she asked me to go there." Gavin shook his head sadly. She asked you to take her to the Union Station downtown, Dad. The safe one. You drove 3 miles in the wrong direction. I looked down at my hands. I let my shoulders slump. Inside, I was screaming. I wanted to reach across the table and grab him by his silk tie. I wanted to tell him I knew about the cut wires in the Mercedes. I wanted to tell him I knew about the script he was following, but I forced myself to stay small. Maybe the street signs were dark, I whispered. Just then, my wife Ruby walked into the kitchen. My heart broke a little more. She was wearing her favorite floral robe, but her hair was uncombed. Her eyes looked cloudy. The medication, the same poison he was giving me, he was giving her. "Morning, my love," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Ruby looked at me, then looked at Gavin. She looked confused. "Is it morning already?" she asked. "I thought it was time for dinner." Gavin stood up immediately and went to her, guiding her to a chair like she was made of glass. "It is breakfast, Mom," he said gently. "Sit down. I will get your pills." He walked to the cabinet. I watched him. I watched him take down the orange bottle. I knew what was in it now. Sedatives, hallucinogens, chemical handcuffs. He placed 2 pills in her hand and gave her a glass of water. "Take these, Mom. It will help with the fog." Ruby swallowed them obediently. She trusted him. We all did. That was our sin. We invited the devil in because he was dressed in a suit. Ruby looked at me, blinking. "Zeke, where are your keys?" she asked suddenly. "My keys?" I asked. "Yes, yesterday. You lost them again. Remember? We looked everywhere." I stared at her. I hadn't lost my keys yesterday. They were on the hook by the door where they always were. But then I remembered. Last night when I came in from the basement, the hook was empty. Gavin had moved them. He was gaslighting her to gaslight me. He was planting memories in her head. I must have misplaced them," I said quietly. "See, Dad," Gavin said, sitting back down. "This is what we are talking about. The keys, the driving, the confusion. It is getting worse." He took a sip of his coffee and looked me dead in the eye. "I am scared for you, Zeke. We all are. What if next time you don't just get lost? What if you hurt someone? What if you hurt Mom?" The accusation hung in the air. He was laying the groundwork for the violence claim. "I would never hurt Ruby," I said, my voice rising just enough to sound defensive but not aggressive. "I know you don't want to," Gavin said, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. "But this disease, it changes people. It makes them do things they can't control." He paused, letting the silence stretch. Then he played his card. "Look, I made a phone call this morning. I have a friend, Dr. Cyrus. He is a specialist in geriatric cognitive decline. He is the best in the city. Usually there is a 6-month waiting list, but he owes me a favor." Dr. Cyrus, the name from the text messages, the man who was going to write the fake medical report. "I don't need a doctor," I grumbled, poking at my toast. "I am just tired." "Zeke, please," Ruby said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. Her hand was cold. "Do it for me. I am worried." I looked at my wife. I saw the fear in her eyes, fear that Gavin had planted there. If I refused, I would look stubborn and irrational. If I agreed, I was walking into a trap. But a trap is only dangerous if you don't know it is there. I looked at Gavin. He was trying to hide his eagerness, but I could see a tiny muscle twitching in his jaw. He was holding his breath. Is he a good man?" I asked, playing the hesitant old fool. "The best," Gavin said. "He just wants to run a few tests, just a checkup. If everything is fine, then we never have to talk about it again. But if there is a problem, we can catch it early." I let out a long, slow breath. I looked around the kitchen where I had cooked pancakes for Nia every Sunday, the kitchen that was now a battlefield. "Okay," I said softly. Gavin exhaled. His shoulders dropped. He smiled. "Okay," he asked. "Yeah, make the appointment. I will go see your friend." "Thank you, Dad," Gavin said, reaching out to pat my arm. His touch made my skin crawl. "You are doing the right thing. I will drive you myself. We can go this afternoon." This afternoon! He was in a hurry. He wanted to get this done before I changed my mind or before the drugs wore off. "Fine," I said, pushing my plate away. "I am not hungry. I am going to go sit in the garden for a while." "Take your time," Gavin said, cheerful now. "Rest up. It is a big day." I stood up and walked out of the kitchen. I walked past the living room, past the hallway, and out the back door onto the patio. The cold air hit my face, and I finally took a deep breath. I walked down the stone path toward the rose bushes where Cyrus was kneeling, pruning the thorns with his good hand. He didn't look up as I approached. "Did he bite?" Cyrus asked quietly. "Hook, line, and sinker," I replied, looking back at the house. Gavin was in the window watching me. I waved at him feebly. He waved back. "He is taking me to Dr. Cyrus this afternoon," I told Cyrus. Cyrus clipped a dead branch. Snap. "Good. The recording device is working perfectly. The audio is crystal clear." We got him admitting to moving the keys, and we got him pushing the doctor. I reached into the breast pocket of my flannel shirt. My fingers brushed against the small, hard plastic of the recorder Cyrus had taped inside my pocket before breakfast. I felt a strange sense of calm. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I am going to let them test me, Cyrus. I am going to let them poke me and prod me and ask me who the president is. I am going to let them write their report. And then Cyrus said, looking up, his dark eyes glittering. And then I said, touching the recorder again, "We are going to burn their whole world down." I turned back to the house. Gavin was still watching. I smiled at him. It was a weak, tired smile. "Enjoy your victory, son," I thought, "because it is the last one you are ever going to have." Dr. Cyrus did not wear a white coat. He wore a tailored Italian suit that cost more than my first car. His office did not smell like antiseptic and sickness. It smelled of mahogany leather and the kind of expensive cologne that tries to mask the scent of greed. I sat in a chair that was too soft, sinking into it like quicksand, while Gavin sat next to me, his posture rigid, his face a mask of concerned sorrow. This was not a clinic. It was a private club for the wealthy to hide their secrets. There were no nurses in the hallway, only a discreet receptionist who made eye contact with no one. I knew exactly what kind of Dr. Cyrus was. He was the kind you paid not to heal you, but to sign the papers you needed signed. Dr. Cyrus leaned back in his chair, tapping a gold fountain pen against a manila folder. He looked at me over the rim of his rimless glasses. His eyes were cold and calculating, assessing me not as a patient, but as a problem to be solved for a fee. "So Gavin tells me we have been having some memory episodes, Zeke. Is it all right if I call you Zeke?" I stared at him, blinking slowly, keeping my mouth slightly open. "It is a trick I learned from watching old men in the park. If you keep your mouth open, people assume your mind is closed. Mr. Freeman," I mumbled. "My friends call me Zeke. You can call me Mr. Freeman." Gavin sighed loud enough for the doctor to hear. "He gets agitated about respect lately, doctor. He thinks everyone is looking down on him." Cyrus nodded, making a note in the folder. "Paranoia, defensive behavior, noted. Let us try a few simple questions, Mr. Freeman. Just to establish a baseline, can you tell me what year it is?" I knew what year it was. It was 2024. I knew the date, the time, and the exact current interest rate of the Federal Reserve. But I looked at the calendar on his wall, and then I looked at my hands. "It is 1998, I said softly. Gavin covered his face with his hands, shaking his head. "Oh, God. It is worse than I thought." Cyrus didn't blink. He just wrote it down. "Disorientation to time. Severe." "Okay, Mr. Freeman. Can you tell me who the President of the United States is?" I looked at Gavin. I let a look of panic cross my face. I acted like a student who hadn't studied for the exam. Is it Clinton?" I asked. Gavin reached out and touched my arm. "No, Dad. It is Biden. Clinton was a long time ago." I pulled my arm away sharply, acting like his touch burned me. "Don't touch me, I know who it is. Stop trying to confuse me," Cyrus wrote again. Aggression, confusion, mood swings. The interrogation continued for 30 minutes. Every question was a trap, and every answer I gave was a carefully calculated lie. I counted backwards from 100, skipping numbers on purpose. I couldn't remember the name of my high school, which I had actually built a new gymnasium for 10 years ago. With every wrong answer, I saw Gavin's shoulders relax. He was winning. He was watching the formidable Ezekiel Freeman dissolve into a puddle of senility right before his eyes. He wasn't sad. He was relieved. He was probably already mentally redecorating my office. Then came the setup for the final blow. Dr. Cyrus put the pen down and clasped his hands. Gavin mentioned an incident at a subway station, and some trouble with keys. Does that happen often? Do you often feel lost in your own home? I looked down at the carpet. "Someone moves my things," I whispered. Someone hides my keys. And the car wires were cut. Gavin looked at the doctor with wide eyes. See? This is what I was talking about. The conspiracy theories. He thinks I am sabotaging the car. He thinks I am hiding his keys. Yesterday, he accused the housekeeper of stealing silver. I slammed my hand on the desk. It was a calculated outburst. I needed to prove the violence. "You are stealing from me," I shouted, standing up. "I know what you are doing. You and this fancy doctor." "Sit down, Dad," Gavin shouted, standing up to restrain me. I shoved him. Not hard enough to hurt him, but hard enough to make him stumble back. Dr. Cyrus didn't move. He just watched like a scientist watching a rat in a maze. "That is enough," he said, his voice sharp. I sat back down, breathing heavily, feigning exhaustion. Dr. Cyrus opened a drawer and pulled out a prescription pad. He didn't even look at my medical history. He didn't ask about my heart condition or my blood pressure. He just started writing. "The diagnosis is clear," he said, tearing the paper off the pad with a ripping sound that echoed in the silent room. "Rapidly progressing dementia. Likely frontal temporal lobe degeneration. That explains the memory loss and the sudden aggression." He handed the paper to Gavin, not me. "This is a high-dose antipsychotic and a strong sedative. It will help manage the outbursts and keep him calm. He needs to take this 3 times a day. And Gavin, I strongly recommend you look into full-time supervision. He is a danger to himself and others." Gavin took the paper like it was a winning lottery ticket. He tried to look somber, but the corner of his mouth twitched upward. "Thank you, doctor. I just want him to be safe. That is all I want." We walked out of the office. I shuffled my feet, letting Gavin guide me by the elbow. The ride home was silent. Gavin hummed a tune along with the radio. He was happy. He had the weapon he needed. When we got back to the estate, he led me into the kitchen. He put the bottle of pills on the counter. He had filled the prescription at the pharmacy downstairs in the clinic building. Efficiency. "Sit here, Dad. I will get you a glass of water. You need to take the first dose now. The doctor said it is urgent." I sat at the table, staring at the orange bottle. My name was on it. The instructions said, "Take 1 tablet every 8 hours for agitation." Gavin turned his back to fill a glass from the refrigerator dispenser. In that split second, a shadow moved near the pantry door. It was Cyrus. He moved with the speed of a striking cobra. He reached out and swapped the orange bottle on the table with an identical one he had in his pocket. The switch took less than a second. By the time Gavin turned around with the water, Cyrus was gone, vanished back into the hallway. "Here you go, Dad." Gavin placed the water in front of me. He opened the bottle and shook out a white pill. It looked exactly like the poison the doctor had prescribed, but I knew what was in Cyrus's bottle. High-potency vitamins and a mild sugar placebo we used to train the dogs. I looked at the pill in Gavin's hand. I looked at his face. He was waiting. "Do it for Mom," he said softly, using his favorite leverage. I took the pill. I put it in my mouth and swallowed it with a gulp of water. "Good," Gavin said. "Good. You will feel better soon. You will feel much calmer." I sat there for 5 minutes while he watched me. I let my eyelids droop. I let my jaw go slack. I slumped slightly in the chair. "I feel tired." I mumbled my words, slurring just a little. "It is working," Gavin said. "Why don't you go sit in the living room, Dad? Watch some TV. I have some calls to make." I stood up, moving slowly, dragging my feet. "Okay, son," I said. I walked to the living room and collapsed onto the sofa. Gavin covered me with a blanket. He patted my shoulder one last time. "Sleep tight, old man," he whispered, and he walked away, pulling out his phone. I heard him dial. "Honey," he said to Nia. The doctor confirmed it. "It is bad. He is violent. We need to file the papers tomorrow." I lay there under the blanket, my eyes closed, listening to him plot my demise. My body was full of vitamins, but my mind was full of vengeance. "Sleep tight, Gavin," I thought, "because when I wake up, the nightmare is going to be yours." The leather armchair in the corner of the living room used to be my throne. It was where I sat to read the blueprints for the skyscrapers that defined the Chicago skyline. It was where I sat to count the profits from my first $1 million deal. But today, as I sat there, wrapped in a wool blanket that was too warm for the room, I felt like a prisoner in a cell made of velvet and mahogany. I was staring at the unlit fireplace, letting my mouth hang slightly open, letting my eyes glaze over. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to look this empty. My mind was sharp alert, analyzing every shadow in the room, but my body had to project the image of a crumbling ruin. The vitamins Cyrus had swapped into the pill bottle were doing their job of keeping me healthy, but the act of pretending to be sedated was exhausting my soul. I heard the front door open, the sound of heels on the hardwood floor, fast, frantic steps. Nia. My heart clenched. I hadn't seen her since the night at the subway station, the night Gavin had orchestrated to look like I abandoned her. I wanted to jump up. I wanted to run to the door and hug her and tell her that her father was still here, that he was still the man who carried her on his shoulders at the zoo. But I stayed seated. I let my head loll to the side. I focused on a speck of dust on the rug. "Daddy?" Her voice was thick with emotion. She rushed into the room, bringing with her the cold scent of the autumn wind and the stress of a woman whose world is tilting on its axis. She stopped a few feet away from me. I could feel her eyes scanning me, looking for the father she knew, finding only the shell Gavin had created. I slowly turned my head. I blinked twice like a camera shutter, trying to focus. "Nia," I rasped. My voice sounded dry, brittle. "Is that you, baby girl?" She let out a small, choked sob and moved to embrace me, but a hand stopped her. Gavin. He had emerged from the hallway, moving smoothly like oil on water. He placed a hand on Nia's shoulder, holding her back gently but firmly. "Careful, honey," he said, his voice low and dripping with fake concern. "He is having a bad day. The medication makes him a little unpredictable in the afternoons." Nia looked at Gavin, then back at me. Unpredictable. That was the word they used for wild animals, not for fathers. "What happened?" she whispered. "You said on the phone it was an emergency." Gavin guided her away from my chair. He steered her toward the far corner of the room near the grand piano. It seemed like a natural move, a husband pulling his wife aside to spare the old man's feelings. But I knew better. That corner was exactly 60 degrees to the right of the bookshelf where Cyrus had hidden a high-resolution camera inside the hollowed-out spine of an encyclopedia. And directly above them, hidden in the intricate molding of the ceiling, was a microphone. They were walking right onto my stage. I kept my eyes fixed on the fireplace, but I strained my ears. The acoustics in the room were good. I had built this house myself. I knew how sound traveled. Gavin sighed, a long, heavy exhale that sounded like he was carrying the weight of the world. "I didn't want to tell you over the phone, Nia," he said. "I didn't want to worry you while you were in court. But yesterday was terrifying." Nia gasped. "What happened, Gavin? Did he fall?" "I wish it was just a fall," Gavin said. "I came into the kitchen around 3 a.m. I smelled gas, the stove was on, all 4 burners, and he was just standing there, staring at the blue flame holding a box of matches. My blood boiled beneath my skin. A lie, a vicious, calculated lie. I hadn't been in the kitchen at 3 a.m. I had been in my bed, staring at the ceiling, plotting his downfall. But the image he painted was horrific. An old man burning down the family home. He tried to light a match, Nia. Gavin continued, his voice trembling with fake fear. "If I hadn't come down, if I had been 5 minutes late, we would all be dead. The house, your mom, everything. Oh my God," Nia wept. She covered her mouth with her hand. "Daddy." He didn't know what he was doing. Gavin said quickly, soothing her. He thought he was lighting a cigar. He thought he was back in the 70s. He was talking to people who weren't there. I gripped the armrest of my chair under the blanket. My knuckles turned white. He was turning my history, my memories, into symptoms of madness. "And that is not the worst part," Gavin added, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "What could be worse than fire?" Nia asked. "The paranoia," Gavin said. "It is the dementia talking, honey, I know that. But it hurts. It really hurts. He has been telling the cleaning lady that I am stealing from him. He told the mailman that I am forging checks." Nia froze. She looked over her shoulder at me. I maintained my blank stare, looking at nothing. He thinks you are stealing," she asked. Gavin nodded, looking down at the floor like a kicked puppy. "He calls me a thief, Nia. After everything I have done, after I quit my job to manage the estate, after I renovated the basement to keep his wine safe. He looks at me with such hate. Dr. Cyrus says it is common. The patient often turns on the primary caregiver. But, God, it is hard." He paused, letting the silence do the work for him. Then he delivered the kill shot. "I can't do this alone, Nia. I can't manage his finances and his health and keep him from burning the house down while he accuses me of being a criminal. I am drowning here. And if he has control of the bank accounts, who knows what he will do? He might transfer everything to a scammer on the internet because he thinks they are his friend. Nia was crying openly now. She turned and buried her face in Gavin's chest. He wrapped his arms around her, petting her hair, looking over her shoulder at me. His eyes met mine. For a second, the mask slipped. He didn't look sad. He looked bored. He looked like a man checking his watch, waiting for a meeting to end. I know it is hard, Nia, sobbing into his suit. I am so sorry. I didn't know it was this bad. We need to protect him, Gavin said softly. We need to take the burden off his shoulders. The legal power of attorney, the financial control. If we sign the papers, I can lock the accounts. I can hire proper nurses. I can make sure he is safe. Nia pulled away, wiping her eyes. She looked at me again. This time her gaze wasn't searching. It was resolved. It was the look of a daughter who thinks she has to be the parent. I will talk to him, she said. She walked across the room. Her steps were heavy. She approached my chair and knelt down beside me. She took my hand. Her hand was warm, but her rings felt cold against my skin. "Daddy," she whispered. I turned to look at her. I put every ounce of love I had into my eyes, trying to push past the fog I was pretending to be in. "Hi, baby," I said. "You look sad." "Who made my girl sad?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. She squeezed my hand. "Daddy, we need to talk about the business, about the accounts." I frowned. "Business?" I asked. I have to pay the suppliers. The concrete shipment is coming on Tuesday." She closed her eyes in pain. I was talking about a shipment from 20 years ago. It broke her heart exactly as I knew it would. "No, Daddy," she said softly. "You are retired. Remember, you don't have to worry about shipments anymore. You don't have to worry about bills." She took a deep breath. "Gavin and we want to help you. We want to make sure you can just relax. We want you to sign a paper, Daddy. Just a paper that lets Gavin handle the checkbook for a while, just until you feel better." I looked past her at Gavin. He was standing by the piano, his hands in his pockets. He nodded at me encouragingly. The supportive son-in-law. I looked back at Nia. I saw the fear in her eyes. The fear of the fire that never happened. The fear of the madness that didn't exist. She was being manipulated by a master. And if I refused, if I shouted, if I told her the truth right now, she wouldn't believe me. She would think it was the paranoia. She would think I was attacking her husband. I had to lose this battle to win the war. I had to break my own heart to save hers. I let my shoulders slump. I let out a long, shaky sigh. "I am tired, baby," I whispered. "I am so tired of fighting. I know, Daddy." She soothed, stroking my hand. "I know. Let us carry the load for a while." I looked at Gavin again. Will he be careful with the money?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It took me a long time to make that money." "He will be careful," Daddy Nia promised. "He loves you. He is family." Family. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. "Okay," I said softly. "Okay, if you say so." Nia let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for days. She kissed my hand. "Thank you, Daddy. It is for the best. You will see." She stood up and turned to Gavin. He walked over briskly, the papers already appearing in his hand as if by magic. He must have had them in his jacket pocket the whole time. "Just sign here, Zeke," he said, clicking a pen and handing it to me. My hand shook as I took the pen. I hesitated. I looked at the signature line. Full financial power of attorney. I pressed the pen to the paper. I wrote my name, Ezekiel Freeman. But I added a tiny, barely visible dot after the middle initial. A dot that wasn't on my driver's license. A dot that wasn't on my bank specimen card. A dot that would make this document worthless when the forensic accountants looked at it later. But to the naked eye, it looked perfect. I handed the paper back to Gavin. He took it. He didn't check it. He was too arrogant. He just folded it and put it in his breast pocket next to his heart, or where his heart should have been. "Thank you, Zeke," he said. "You won't regret this." Nia hugged me again, tight and desperate. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. "I have to go back to the office, but I will come back on the weekend. We will watch the game." Okay, baby," I said. "Watch the game." She walked to the door. Gavin walked her out, his arm around her waist, whispering comforts into her ear. I watched them go. Gavin paused at the doorway while Naya stepped out onto the porch. He turned back to look at me. He wasn't smiling with his mouth. He was smiling with his eyes, a cold, dead look of triumph. He raised his hand and gave me a small, mocking salute. Then he turned and closed the door. The click of the latch echoed in the silent room. I sat there for a long time. I lifted my hand and wiped the spot where Nia's tears had fallen on my skin. I looked at the corner of the room, at the hidden camera. "Did you get that, Cyrus?" I said to the empty room, my voice clear and strong. His voice came through the tiny earpiece I had hidden deep in my ear canal. "Every frame, sir. Every word. The lie about the fire. The coercion. It is all there." "Good," I said, standing up and throwing the heavy wool blanket off my legs. I walked to the window and watched Gavin's car pull out of the driveway following Nia's car. He was driving to the bank. I knew it. "Let him go," I said. "Let him think he has the keys to the kingdom." I turned back to the empty room, because when he tries to open the door, he is going to find out that the castle is rigged to blow. The back seat of a police cruiser is a humiliation I thought I had left behind in the 1960s. I remember the last time I sat behind a wire mesh barrier. It was 1968, and I had been arrested for protesting for fair housing laws. I was young then. I was dangerous because I had a voice. Now sitting in the back of Officer Miller's patrol car at 7 in the evening, I was dangerous for a different reason. I was dangerous because I was supposedly losing my mind. Officer Miller was a kind man too young to know who I really was. He looked at me in the rearview mirror with pity in his eyes. "We are almost home, Mr. Freeman," he said, his voice soft like he was talking to a toddler. "Do not worry. Your son-in-law is waiting for you." He was very worried when he called us. I stared out the window at the passing streetlights. I had not been lost. I had simply gone for a walk to the corner store to buy a newspaper. It was a routine I had kept for 40 years. But when the officer stopped me 2 blocks from my house, he asked for my identification. I reached for my wallet. It was gone. My wallet, which I had placed on my nightstand before my nap, was not in my pocket. Officer Miller had held up a plastic evidence bag. Inside was my brown leather wallet. "We found this in a public trash can behind a liquor store on 47th Street, sir," he had said. "That is 10 miles from here. Do you remember how it got there?" I knew exactly how it got there. Gavin had taken it while I slept, driven it to the worst part of town and dumped it. Then he called the police and reported me missing. He told them I had wandered off hours ago. I did not argue with the officer. Arguing is a symptom of aggression. Aggression is a symptom of dementia. I just shook my head and let him help me into the car. As we turned into my driveway, the scene that greeted us was like a circus. There were 2 other police cars with their lights flashing, illuminating the front of my house in blinding bursts of red and blue. Neighbors were standing on their porches, peering through the darkness. Mrs. Gable from next door was shaking her head, talking to another neighbor pointing at my house. The shame burned my face. I had spent 50 years making the name Freeman mean something in this neighborhood. I was the pillar of the community. Now I was the cautionary tale. The cruiser stopped. Before Officer Miller could even open the door, Gavin came running out of the house. He was not wearing his suit jacket. His tie was loosened. His hair was messy. He looked frantic. He looked like a man on the edge of a breakdown. Oscar-worthy, I thought bitterly. "Dad." Gavin screamed, running toward the car. "Dad, are you okay?" Officer Miller opened the door and I stepped out. My knees felt stiff. Gavin threw his arms around me. It was not a hug, it was a restraint. He squeezed me hard enough to bruise, pressing the air out of my lungs. "Where did you go?" He sobbed loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. I turned my back for 5 minutes. "Just 5 minutes to go to the bathroom and you were gone." I stood stiffly in his arms. I could smell the wine on his breath. He had been celebrating his victory before I even got home. "I just went for a walk," I said quietly. A walk. Gavin pulled back, gripping my shoulders. His fingers dug into my flesh. "A walk to the south side." "The police found your wallet 10 miles away, Dad." 10 miles. Did you walk 10 miles? Did you get in a cab? Do you even remember? I looked at the 3 police officers standing in a circle around us. They were nodding sympathetically at Gavin. They saw a young, successful white man burdening himself with the care of a senile, ungrateful father-in-law. I don't know, I stammered, playing my part. I thought I had my wallet. Officer Miller stepped forward, handing Gavin the evidence bag. He was confused when we found him, Mr. Thorne. He didn't know his wallet was missing. It is lucky a sanitation worker found it and called the number on the medical alert card inside. Medical alert card. I didn't have a medical alert card. Gavin must have planted that too. He was thorough. Gavin took the wallet and clutched it to his chest like it was a holy relic. Thank you, officer. Thank you so much. We have been so scared. My wife, she is inside. She can't even stand up. She is so upset. Gavin turned his gaze back to me. The sadness in his face vanished, replaced by a flash of pure, cold anger. But to the police, it looked like the frustration of a desperate caregiver. "You have to stop this, Zeke," he shouted. I flinched. The volume of his voice was shocking. "You are killing us," he yelled, pointing a finger in my face. "You are killing your wife. Do you know that?" "Ruby is inside having a panic attack because you decided to go on an adventure. She thinks you are dead. Do you care? Do you care about anyone but yourself?" I looked down at my shoes. Inside, my heart was hammering against my ribs. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to break his jaw. But I saw a movement in the bushes near the garage, just a slight rustle of the hydrangeas. Cyrus. He was there watching. He had told me to endure this. "Let him scream," Cyrus had said. "Let him build the stage." "I am sorry," I whispered. "I didn't mean to." "Sorry isn't enough," Gavin roared. He was performing for the back row now, ensuring every neighbor heard him. "We can't do this anymore. I can't watch you 24 hours a day. I have a job. I have a life. You are destroying this family." He turned to the police officers, spreading his hands in a gesture of helplessness. "I don't know what to do anymore. Dr. Aris said it would get bad, but I didn't think it would happen this fast. He is escaping. He is aggressive. What if he had walked into traffic? What if he had hurt someone?" Officer Miller put a hand on Gavin's shoulder. "You are doing the best you can, sir. It is a heavy burden. Have you considered a secure facility?" Gavin covered his face with his hands. "I promised my wife we would keep him home," he said, his voice breaking. "But maybe you are right. Maybe it is time." He looked back at me. His eyes were hard as flint. "Get inside, Dad. Just get inside." He turned and walked toward the house, stomping his feet. He walked past his silver Porsche 911, which was parked in the driveway, gleaming under the police lights. This was my moment. I took a step toward him, and then I let my legs buckle. It wasn't hard to fake. The emotional weight of the night was heavy enough to make anyone stumble. "Whoa there," Officer Miller said, reaching out to catch me. I pulled away from him, stumbling forward. I lunged toward the Porsche as if I was trying to catch my balance. I fell against the back of the car, my chest hitting the trunk, my hand scrabbling for purchase on the rear bumper. Dad, Gavin yelled, turning around. "Watch the paint." I slid down to the ground, groaning, clutching my chest. "I am okay," I wheezed. "I just slipped." The officers rushed to help me up. In the chaos, with 3 men grabbing my arms and Gavin shouting about his car paint, my right hand moved. I reached into the pocket of my trousers. My fingers closed around the small black device Cyrus had given me before I left the house. It was a GPS tracker, powerful, magnetic, and waterproof. As the officers lifted me, I let my hand dangle near the undercarriage of the Porsche. I made a show of struggling, trying to get my feet under me, kicking my leg out slightly to distract them. And then I shoved the device upward. Click. It was a soft metallic sound, barely audible over the crackle of the police radios and Gavin's complaining. The magnet bit into the steel frame inside the rear bumper. It was secure. I let out a long sigh and allowed Officer Miller to pull me to my feet. "I am sorry about your car," I muttered to Gavin. Gavin rushed over, inspecting the bumper for scratches. He didn't look underneath. He was too obsessed with the surface. "It is fine," he snapped. "Just get inside before you break something else." He grabbed my arm roughly and marched me toward the front door. "Thank you, officers," he called back over his shoulder. "I will make sure the doors are locked tonight." We entered the house. The moment the heavy oak door closed behind us, the sobbing husband act vanished. Gavin let go of my arm and shoved me forward. I stumbled, catching myself on the hallway table. "You are pathetic," he hissed. He walked past me, straightening his tie. "Go to your room, and don't come out. If I hear that door open, I will tell the police you hit me, and next time they won't bring you home. They will take you to the psych ward." I watched him walk into the kitchen. I heard the pop of a cork. He was opening champagne. I walked slowly up the stairs. My legs were tired, but my spirit was soaring. He thought he had tightened the noose around my neck tonight. He thought the police report was the final nail in my coffin. But he was wrong. I touched my pocket where the tracker had been. Now I knew where he went. I knew where he spent my money. I knew who he met in the shadows. Go ahead and drive, Gavin, I thought as I climbed the stairs. Drive to your mistress. Drive to your offshore banker. Drive to hell for all I care. I will be right there with you riding shotgun. I went into my bedroom and closed the door. I didn't turn on the light. I went straight to the window and looked down at the driveway. The police were leaving. The Porsche sat there dark and silent like a sleeping beast. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text from Cyrus. Signal is strong. Tracking is active. Get some sleep, sir. Tomorrow we go hunting. I lay down on my bed fully clothed. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in weeks, I fell asleep with a smile on my face. The hunt was on, and the lion was finally awake. The house was no longer mine. It had been occupied by an invading army of one. Her name was Chloe. She was the private nurse Gavin had hired to take care of Ruby. He told Nia that he had found her through a high-end agency that specialized in difficult dementia cases. He said she was an angel, but I know what angels look like, and they do not look like Chloe. Chloe was 25 years old with hair the color of corn silk and eyes that looked like they had been cut from blue glass. She wore pastel pink scrubs that were tailored tight to her body, too tight for a medical professional. When she walked down the hallway, the rubber soles of her white sneakers squeaked against the hardwood floor, a sound that grated on my nerves like fingernails on a chalkboard. For 40 years, Ruby and I had never spent a night apart. Even when I was traveling for construction jobs, I would drive 4 hours back home just to sleep in my own bed next to her. Her breathing was the rhythm of my life. But for the last 2 nights, I had slept alone in the guest room. Gavin said it was for my own good. He said my tossing and turning was disturbing Ruby's rest. I stood in the hallway holding a single yellow rose I had cut from the garden. It was Ruby's favorite. I wanted to see her. I wanted to hold her hand and tell her that I was still here, that I hadn't abandoned her. I reached for the handle of the master bedroom door. It was locked. I jiggled the handle. Nothing. Suddenly the door opened a crack. Chloe stood there blocking the entrance with her body. She smiled, but it was not a smile of warmth. It was the smile a bouncer gives you before he throws you out of the club. "Mr. Freeman," she said, her voice sugary sweet. "What are you doing here?" "I want to see my wife," I said, holding up the flower. "I want to give her this." Chloe shook her head slowly as if I was a naughty child. "I am afraid that is not a good idea right now, Zeke. She is resting. We had a very difficult morning. She was very agitated." "Agitated?" I asked. "Ruby is never agitated. She is the gentlest soul on God's earth." "That was before the disease took hold," Chloe said. Her tone was patronizing. "And unfortunately, seeing you seems to be a trigger. When you are in the room, she gets confused. She thinks you are a stranger. It raises her blood pressure. Dr. Cyrus gave strict instructions. No visitors when she is unstable." "I am not a visitor," I growled, my hand tightening on the stem of the rose until a thorn pierced my thumb. "I am her husband, and I am her nurse," Chloe said, her voice dropping an octave, losing the sweetness. "And my job is to protect her, even from you, especially from you." She looked past me down the hall. I turned to see Gavin walking toward us. He was buttoning his cuffs, looking fresh and rested. "Everything okay here, Chloe?" he asked, not even looking at me. "Your father-in-law is having a hard time understanding the boundaries," Gavin, Chloe said. "He is trying to force his way in." Gavin stopped in front of me. He sighed that heavy, disappointed sigh he had perfected. "Dad, we talked about this. You are stressing her out." "I am stressing her out," I whispered. "You have locked her in a room with a stranger. You are pumping her full of drugs. Let me see her." Gavin stepped closer to me, invading my personal space. He smelled of expensive soap and arrogance. "Look at yourself, Zeke. You are shaking. You are aggressive. Do you want Ruby to see you like this? Do you want her last memories of you to be of a crazy old man shouting in the hallway?" I looked at my hand. It was shaking. Not from dementia, but from the sheer effort it took not to wrap my fingers around his throat. "Go downstairs, Dad," Gavin said, pointing toward the stairs. "Go sit in the garden. Chloe will bring you your lunch. Let the professionals do their job." Chloe smirked at me, then closed the bedroom door. The click of the lock was the loudest sound in the world. I turned and walked away. I walked down the stairs past the portraits of our happy life, past the empty kitchen, and out the back door. I didn't go to the patio. I went straight to the greenhouse. The greenhouse was Cyrus's domain. It was warm and humid and smelled of wet earth and growing things. It was the only place on the estate where the air felt clean. Cyrus was standing by the potting table. He wasn't working on plants. He was looking at a tablet computer, his face illuminated by the glow of the screen. He didn't say hello. He just turned the tablet around so I could see it. "Her name is not Chloe Miller," Cyrus said, his voice grim. "Her name is Chloe Vance." I looked at the screen. It was a mugshot. Chloe looked younger in the picture, her hair unkempt, her makeup smeared. But the cold eyes were the same. "She was a registered nurse in Ohio 3 years ago," Cyrus continued. "She worked at a high-end assisted living facility. She was fired and stripped of her license." Why, I asked, feeling a cold dread settle in my stomach. "Diversion of narcotics and patient abuse," Cyrus said. "She was dating a doctor there. They had a scheme. They would over-medicate the wealthy patients, keep them in a zombie state, and then bill the families for round-the-clock specialized care. One of the patients died from an overdose. The family settled out of court to keep it quiet." I looked at the photo again. Patient abuse. Overdose. "She is doing it again," I said. "She is doing it to Ruby." "And there is more," Cyrus said. He swiped the screen. It was a photo taken from a distance. It showed Gavin and Chloe sitting at a small cafe table. They were leaning in close. Gavin's hand was resting on hers. "They didn't meet at an agency," Cyrus said. "They met 2 years ago at a club in downtown Chicago. She has been his mistress for 18 months. My legs gave out. I sat down heavily on a stack of potting soil bags. It wasn't just greed. It was personal. He had brought his lover into my house to torment my wife. He was making my wife suffer while he played house with the woman he was cheating on my daughter with. The rage that filled me was different this time. It wasn't hot. It was cold. Absolute zero. "We can't wait, Cyrus," I said, my voice steady. Cyrus nodded. "I agree, sir. If she keeps increasing the dosage, Mrs. Ruby might not wake up. Her heart is weak. She cannot handle the chemical cocktail they are feeding her." I looked at the greenhouse glass. I could see the window of the master bedroom on the 2nd floor. The curtains were drawn. "He wants to declare me incompetent," I said. "He wants the conservatorship. That is his endgame." "Yes," Cyrus said. "The hearing is in 3 days. He needs you to have a major public breakdown before then. Or what I asked. Or he needs you out of the way permanently," Cyrus said. "If you die, he gets everything through Naya. If you are locked up, he gets control. Either way, he wins." I stood up. I brushed the dirt off my pants. "I am not going to die," I said, "and I am not going to be locked up." I looked at Cyrus. "Is the banking back door ready?" Cyrus smiled, a wolfish smile. "It has been ready for a week, sir. The trapdoor is unlocked. All you have to do is push him through. We accelerate the timeline," I said. "Tonight." "Tonight?" Cyrus asked, raising an eyebrow. "Tonight," I repeated. "He thinks I am beaten. He thinks I am isolated. He thinks he has his mistress guarding the tower and his wife wrapped around his finger. He is going to get sloppy." I pointed to the tablet. "Print that file, Cyrus. The mugshot, the revocation of her license, and the photos of them together." "What are you going to do with them, sir?" "I am going to keep them in my pocket," I said. "I am going to hold on to them like a grenade. And when the time is right, I am going to pull the pin." I walked to the door of the greenhouse. "Where are you going?" Cyrus asked. "I am going back into the house," I said. "I am going to take my pills like a good boy. I am going to sit in my chair and drool. I am going to let Chloe sneer at me." I turned back to look at my old friend. "But watch the monitors tonight, Cyrus. Because around midnight, the ghost is going to walk." Cyrus nodded slowly. "I will be watching, sir." I walked back toward the house. The wind had picked up, blowing dead leaves across the lawn. The sky was turning gray, promising a storm. Good, I thought. Let it storm. Let the thunder shake the walls. I walked into the kitchen. Chloe was there making tea. She jumped when she saw me. "I thought I told you to stay outside," she snapped. I didn't answer. I just walked past her, my head down, my feet shuffling. I went to the living room and sat in my chair. I closed my eyes, but inside my head, I was sharpening my knife. "You want to play Dr. Gavin? You want to play with people's lives? Okay, Let us see how you like the taste of your own medicine." The piece of paper Gavin slid across the breakfast table was heavy. Not physically heavy, but it carried the weight of a judge's gavel. It was a temporary restraining order on my own assets, a court order freezing every bank account, every stock portfolio, and every liquid asset under the name Ezekiel Freeman. Gavin did not look me in the eye when he gave it to me. He was too busy buttering his toast, spreading the golden jam with the precision of a man who believes he has just won the lottery. "It is just a precaution, Dad," he said, his voice casual. "The court agrees that given your recent episodes, it is dangerous for you to have unrestricted access to large sums of money. We don't want you falling victim to scams, or losing it, or forgetting where you put it." I picked up the paper. My hands shook. This time I didn't have to pretend. The anger vibrating in my bones made my hands tremble naturally. "I want to go to the bank," I said. My voice was low, gravelly. "I want to talk to Henderson." Gavin sighed. He put down his knife. "Henderson can't help you, Zeke. This is a court order. It is federal." I stood up. "I want to go to the bank," I repeated louder this time, letting a bit of the dementia aggression leak out. "Take me to the bank or I will walk there myself." Gavin rolled his eyes, but he stood up. He grabbed his car keys. "Fine. If you want to embarrass yourself, fine. Let us go. Maybe hearing it from the bank manager will finally make you understand that you are not in charge anymore." The ride to the First City Bank of Chicago was silent. Gavin drove my Mercedes, forcing me to sit in the passenger seat of my own car. He adjusted the mirrors. He changed my radio station from the blues channel to some mindless pop music. He was erasing me one small indignity at a time. I stared out the window at the city I had helped build. We passed the Freeman Tower on 4th Street. I laid the foundation for that building in 1985. We passed the community center I donated to the city in 92. Gavin didn't look at any of it. He only saw the reflection of his own ambition in the glass windows. When we arrived at the bank, Gavin made a show of helping me out of the car. He gripped my elbow too tight, steering me toward the revolving doors like I was a prisoner being transferred. The bank was cool and smelled of money and floor polish. I had been banking here for 40 years. I knew the security guards. I knew the tellers. I knew the smell of the coffee in the waiting area. But today the atmosphere was different. As soon as we walked in, the security guard, a man named Johnson, who I had hired personally for his daughter's wedding, looked away. He couldn't meet my eyes. Gavin marched me straight to the manager's office. The door was open. Mr. Henderson was sitting behind his large oak desk. He was a small man, nervous with a comb over that failed to hide his insecurity. He had been managing my personal accounts for 15 years. He owed his career to me. But when he saw us, he didn't stand up to shake my hand. He stayed seated, shifting uncomfortably. "Mr. Thorne," he said, nodding to Gavin. "And Mr. Freeman." I sat down in the leather chair. I leaned forward, placing my rough hands on his polished desk. "I want to make a withdrawal, Henderson," I said. $50,000. Cash. Henderson swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed. He looked at Gavin, then back at me. "Mr. Freeman, we received the court documents this morning. I don't care about papers," I snapped, slamming my hand on the desk. "It is my money. I earned it. I want it." Henderson looked like he wanted to crawl under his desk. "Sir, please. The accounts are frozen pending the competency hearing. I cannot authorize any transactions without the co-signature of your court-appointed temporary guardian." He looked at Gavin. Gavin smiled, a sad, apologetic smile. "I am sorry, Mr. Henderson," Gavin said, smooth as silk. "My father-in-law is having a hard time processing the reality of the situation. The dementia? It makes him fixate on things. He thinks it is 1999. I am sitting right here," I shouted, standing up. "I am not a ghost. Stop talking about me like I am dead." The outburst was loud. People in the lobby turned to look. I saw the tellers whispering. I saw a woman clutching her purse tighter. "See," Gavin said, standing up and putting a hand on my shoulder. "See how he gets. It is the aggression." Henderson looked at me with pity. Pure, unadulterated pity. That was the knife that cut the deepest. He didn't see the man who owned half the block. He saw a senile old relic who needed to be managed. "Please sit down," Zeke, Henderson said softly. "Do not make a scene." I looked at Henderson. I looked at Gavin. I felt the trap closing around me. They had the law. They had the public perception. They had the power, or so they thought. I let out a long, shuddering breath. I let my shoulders collapse. I sat back down, burying my face in my hands. I just wanted to buy a gift, I whispered, my voice breaking. For Ruby. A necklace. Gavin patted my back. It was a patronizing rhythmic pat. We will get Mom a nice gift, Dad. I will buy it. Don't you worry. I sniffed, wiping my nose with the back of my hand. I need to use the restroom, I said. My stomach. The medication. Gavin looked at Henderson. Henderson nodded. Of course. You know where it is, Zeke. Just down the hall. Gavin checked his watch. Go ahead, Dad. I will sign some paperwork with Mr. Henderson while you are gone. Do not get lost. I stood up and shuffled out of the office. I walked slowly past the staring customers, dragging my feet, looking at the floor. I looked every inch, the defeated, broken old man. I pushed open the door to the executive washroom. It was empty. I checked the stalls. Empty. I went to the sink and turned on the cold water. I splashed it on my face, washing away the sweat of the performance. I looked at myself in the mirror. The man staring back was not confused. He was not broken. His eyes were hard and clear. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. I pulled out a phone. Not the smartphone Gavin monitored, not the landline he tapped. This was a slim burner phone, purely encrypted, that Cyrus had taped under the sink of this very bathroom 2 hours ago before we arrived. I dialed a number, 1 digit at a time. I knew it by heart. It rang once, twice. Voice authorization required, a robotic voice said, Omega, Black, Horizon. I said clearly. The line clicked. A human voice answered, a voice that sounded surprised and respectful. Chairman Freeman. We were not expecting a call on this line. Is everything all right? I leaned against the tiled wall. Listen to me carefully. I am at the Chicago branch. Henderson just refused a withdrawal based on a temporary court order filed by Gavin Thorne. Yes, sir. We saw the alert in the system. Legal is already reviewing it. Do you want us to override it? We can crush the order. The holding company that owns the bank is outside of U.S. jurisdiction for these types of civil freezes. You are the majority shareholder of the parent corporation. You own the bank, Mr. Freeman. Henderson is just an employee. No, I said. Do not override it. Sir, the voice asked, confused. Let the order stand, I said. Let Gavin think he has won. Let him think he has frozen me out. I want him to feel safe. I want him to feel powerful. I paused, looking at my reflection again. But I want a shadow trace on every single penny he moves. If he buys a stick of gum with the joint account, I want to know. And the Cayman accounts, the ones he thinks are hidden, I want you to buy the debt of the bank that holds them. Buy the bank, sir. You heard me. Buy the bank. Buy his debt. I want to own the mortgage on his soul by Monday morning. Understood, Chairman. We will initiate the acquisition immediately. Anything else? Yes, I said. Flag Henderson for a performance review. He lacks loyalty. I hung up. I wiped the phone down and taped it back under the sink. I took a deep breath. I practiced my tremors. I let my jaw go slack. I walked back out into the hallway. Gavin was waiting for me outside the office, holding a folder of papers. He looked triumphant. Feel better, Dad? He asked. I nodded, looking at the floor. I want to go home now, I whispered. I am tired. Sure, Gavin said, steering me toward the exit. Let us go home. You have had a big day. As we walked out, I glanced at the security camera in the corner of the lobby. I winked. A tiny, imperceptible wink. You froze my accounts, Gavin. But you forgot one thing. I don't just put my money in the bank. I am the bank. The courtroom smelled of lemon floor wax and old wood. It was a smell I used to associate with contracts and zoning permits, but today it smelled like a funeral home. My funeral home. I sat at the defendant's table wearing a suit that was 2 sizes too big. Gavin had selected it for me this morning. He said it was the only clean one he could find, but I knew the truth. He wanted me to look small. He wanted me to look like a withered husk of a man shrinking inside clothes that belonged to a ghost. My lawyer sat next to me. His name was Mr. Sterling. Naya had recommended him. She said he was a shark who would fight for my rights. But sharks don't fight for the bait, they eat it. For the last hour, Sterling had done nothing but nod as Gavin's legal team dismantled my life piece by piece. He hadn't objected once. He hadn't called a single character witness. He just sat there checking his expensive watch, probably calculating how quickly he could get to the golf course after he helped bury me. The judge was a woman named Judge Patterson. She looked tired. She looked like a woman who had seen too many family tragedies and just wanted to get through the docket. She looked at me over her reading glasses, and I saw the judgment in her eyes before the gavel even banged. She didn't see Ezekiel Freeman, the man who rebuilt the South Side. She saw case number 492, an elderly male with advanced dementia in need of state protection. Gavin's lawyer stood up. He was a young man with a sharp nose and a voice that carried like a trumpet. "Your Honor," he began, holding up a flash drive. "We have presented the evidence. It is irrefutable. Mr. Freeman is a danger to himself and others." He pointed to the screen mounted on the wall. Exhibit A, the subway incident. The video played again, me driving away. Nia standing alone on the curb. In the harsh courtroom light, it looked even worse. It looked cruel. Exhibit B, the medical evaluation. Dr. Aris's report flashed on the screen. The words frontal temporal dementia were highlighted in yellow. The report claimed I had scored a 12 out of 30 on the cognitive assessment. A lie. I had scored perfectly, but Aris had written down whatever Gavin paid him to write. Exhibit C, the police report from last night. The lawyer walked over to the jury box even though there was no jury, only the judge. This was a hearing, not a trial. The subject was found wandering 10 miles from his home, disoriented and unaware of his identity, the lawyer said dramatically. He became aggressive with his son-in-law upon returning home. We have the sworn affidavit of Officer Miller. Gavin sat in the front row behind his lawyer. He was wearing a dark suit and a tie that was somber but stylish. He had his head bowed. He was playing the role of the grieving son perfectly. Every now and then he would dab his eyes with a handkerchief. It was a masterclass in manipulation. Judge Patterson sighed and looked at my lawyer. "Mr. Sterling, do you have any defense to present? Does your client wish to contest the medical findings?" Sterling cleared his throat. He didn't even stand up. "Your Honor," he said, his voice smooth and dismissive, "we have reviewed the evidence. While it is painful for Mr. Freeman to admit, the family believes that a temporary conservatorship is in his best interest. We do not wish to prolong these proceedings. We just want Mr. Freeman to be safe." I felt a cold spike of adrenaline in my chest. This was it. The betrayal was absolute. Sterling wasn't just incompetent, he was bought. Gavin must have promised him a retainer for the estate's legal work once he took control. I looked at Gavin. He was watching me through his fingers. His eyes were bright with anticipation. He was waiting for me to explode. He was waiting for the aggression. He wanted me to stand up and shout about conspiracies so the judge could see how crazy I was. I took a deep breath. I thought about Cyrus. I thought about the camera in the living room. I thought about the GPS tracker on the Porsche. "Hold the line, Zeke," I told myself. "Hold the line." I slowly pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the floor, loud and harsh in the silent room. Judge Patterson looked at me. "Mr. Freeman, do you have something to say?" Sterling put a hand on my arm. "Sit down, Zeke." "Let me handle this." I shook his hand off. My movements were jerky, tremulous. I want to speak," I said, my voice cracking. The judge nodded. "Go ahead, sir." I stood up. I hunched my shoulders. I gripped the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping me upright. I looked around the room, letting my eyes dart nervously from face to face. I don't remember the subway," I stammered. I tried to sound confused, scared. I love my daughter. I would never leave her." Judge Patterson's expression softened slightly. It was pity again. "We know you love her, Mr. Freeman," she said gently, "but sometimes illness changes us." I looked at Gavin. I locked eyes with him. "Gavin is a good boy," I said. The words tasted like bile, but I forced them out. "He takes care of me. He takes care of Ruby." Gavin straightened up. He looked surprised. He hadn't expected praise. I am tired," I continued, letting my voice drop to a whisper. "I am tired of fighting. Maybe the doctor is right. I forget things. I get angry. I don't want to burn the house down." I saw Gavin smile. A real smile this time. He couldn't help it. He was watching his enemy surrender. "So, I agree," I said, looking at the judge. "I agree to the conservatorship. Let Gavin handle the money. I just want to rest." Sterling looked relieved. The judge looked relieved. "Thank you, Mr. Freeman," Judge Patterson said, picking up her pen. "That is a very brave decision. But," I added, raising a shaking finger. The judge paused. "But what, Mr. Freeman? I I have one request. Gavin leaned forward. I could see the tension return to his shoulders. I have been a businessman for 50 years, I said. My name. It means something in this town. If I am going to retire, if I am going to hand everything over to Gavin, I want to do it right. I turned to look at Gavin. I want a party, I said. This Saturday. A party, the judge asked, confused. A farewell party, I said, at my house. I want to invite my partners, the investors, the city councilmen, all the people I did business with. I took a step toward Gavin, my hands pleading. I want to introduce you to them, Gavin, properly. I want to tell them that you are the boss now. I want to shake your hand in front of everyone so they know I trust you. I don't want to just disappear. I want to pass the torch. Gavin stared at me. I could see the gears turning in his head. He had expected a fight. He hadn't expected a coronation. He stood up. Your Honor. Gavin said, his voice full of emotion. I think that is a wonderful idea. Dad deserves a send-off. He deserves to be honored for his legacy. Judge Patterson smiled. It was the first time she had smiled all morning. That sounds like a lovely compromise, she said. She signed the paper. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper was the sound of a cell door closing. Order granted. Temporary conservatorship awarded to Gavin Thorne, effective immediately. Court is adjourned. The gavel banged. Gavin rushed over to me. He hugged me. You did the right thing, Dad, he whispered in my ear. You finally did the right thing. I patted his back awkwardly. I just want you to meet everyone, I mumbled. I want them to know who you really are. I will make you proud, Dad, Gavin said, pulling away. We will throw the biggest party Chicago has ever seen. Saturday night. It will be legendary. He grabbed his briefcase. He looked like he was walking on air. He shook hands with Sterling. He shook hands with the prosecutor. He owned the world. Come on, Dad, let us go home, he said, guiding me toward the door. We have a lot of planning to do. I walked beside him, keeping my head down. Yes, Gavin, I thought. We have a lot of planning to do. You think this is your coronation. You think you are going to stand on the stage and accept the crown of my empire. But you don't know who is on the guest list. You don't know that the investors coming on Saturday aren't just business partners. They are the sharks you thought you were swimming with. And you don't know that the torch I am going to pass to you is actually a stick of dynamite. Saturday night, Gavin. Saturday night, the music stops. I walked out of the courtroom and into the bright, harsh light of the hallway. I blinked, fighting back the urge to smile. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Now all I had to do was wait for the weekend. My home had been invaded. That was the only way to describe it. For 30 years, the great hall of my estate had been a place of quiet dignity where I hosted community leaders and charity dinners. Tonight it looked like a nightclub for the soulless. Gavin had hired a lighting crew to bathe the room in purple and gold beams. He had hired a DJ who was playing a remix of a song I didn't recognize, a thumping bass that rattled the antique crystal in the cabinets. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my dressing room. I looked like a scarecrow. Gavin had removed all my tailored suits from the closet. He had left me with one option, a gray wool suit I hadn't worn since 1995. It was moth-eaten at the cuffs and hung loosely off my frame because I had lost 20 pounds since then. Gavin walked in behind me, adjusting his own silk tie in the mirror. He looked like a prince. I looked like his pauper father. Perfect, he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. You look comfortable, Dad. Comfortable. That was code for pathetic. He didn't want the guests to see Ezekiel Freeman, the titan of industry. He wanted them to see Ezekiel Freeman, the relic. He wanted them to see a man who had shrunk inside his own life. He reached out and buttoned the top button of my shirt. It was too tight. It pinched my neck, making it hard to swallow. Don't undo that, he ordered softly. We want you to look proper. He turned me around to face him. He brushed a piece of imaginary lint off my lapel. Now remember the rules. Smile. Shake hands. If anyone asks you how business is, you tell them you are happy to be retired. You tell them you are tired. Do not start talking about interest rates or zoning laws. If you get confused, just wave at me and I will come rescue you. I nodded slowly, letting my mouth hang open just a fraction. I understand, I mumbled. I just want some cake. Gavin laughed, a cold, short bark of a laugh. You will get your cake, Dad. Just play your part. He led me out of the room and to the top of the grand staircase. Below us, the sea of people churned. I looked down at the faces. I recognized them. There were bankers who had denied me loans 40 years ago only to beg for my business 10 years later. There were developers who had tried to undercut my bids. There were politicians whose campaigns I had funded hoping they would finally pave the roads in the black neighborhoods. They were drinking my champagne. They were eating the shrimp cocktail paid for by my sweat, and they were waiting to watch me fall. The music lowered. A spotlight hit the top of the stairs, blinding me for a second. "Ladies and gentlemen," Gavin's voice boomed over the microphone. He was standing at the bottom of the stairs, arms wide open like a ringmaster. "Please put your hands together for the man of the hour, the legend, my father-in-law, Ezekiel Freeman." Applause rippled through the room. It wasn't the thunderous applause of respect. It was the polite golf clap of pity. Gavin bounded up the stairs and grabbed my elbow. He gripped it hard enough to bruise. To the crowd, it looked like he was supporting a frail old man. In reality, he was dragging me. We walked down the stairs, step by step. I made sure to shuffle. I made sure to look down at my feet as if I was terrified of falling. "Careful, Dad." Gavin whispered loudly enough for the people in the front row to hear. "One step at a time. I have got you." We reached the bottom. The crowd parted. Faces loomed at me, distorted by the purple lights. "Zeke, so good to see you," a man said, pressing a clammy hand into mine. It was Thomas Sterling, the developer who had tried to sue me in 2008. I looked at him blankly. Do I know you?" I asked. Sterling chuckled, looking at Gavin. "He is really gone, isn't he?" Sterling whispered. Gavin nodded solemnly. "It comes and goes, Thomas. Some days he thinks he is still pouring concrete. Today is a good day, though. He recognizes me. I let them talk about me as if I was a piece of furniture. I let them shake my limp hand. I let them offer me their condolences on my failing mind. Gavin led me to a high-backed velvet chair in the center of the room. He sat me down like a doll. "Stay here, Dad. I have an announcement to make." He walked to the stage that had been set up in front of the fireplace. He tapped the microphone. The room went silent. "Thank you all for coming," Gavin said, his smile dazzling. "Tonight is a bittersweet night. We are here to celebrate the incredible legacy of Ezekiel Freeman, a man who built this city with his bare hands." He gestured to me. The spotlight swung back to my chair. I blinked, looking small and lost in the oversized suit, but Gavin continued, his voice dropping to a somber tone. "As many of you know, Zeke has been struggling with his health. The mind is a fragile thing, and while his spirit is strong, his ability to captain the ship has faced some challenges." Naya was standing in the front row. She was wiping tears from her eyes. She believed every word. She looked at me with such heartbreak that I almost broke character. I almost stood up and shouted that I was fine, but I couldn't. Not yet. So Gavin said, his voice rising with energy, "It is my honor and my duty to step up. As of today, following the court's decision, I will be assuming full control of Freeman Construction and the Freeman Family Trust." Applause again, louder this time. The vultures smelled fresh meat. "And I want to announce our new direction," Gavin shouted over the clapping. "For too long, this company has been stuck in the past. We have been holding on to assets that are sentimental but not profitable." He clicked a remote. A projection screen lowered behind him. It showed a map of the South Side. My neighborhood. The neighborhood where I built affordable housing. The neighborhood where I kept rents low so families could survive. "We are launching the Phoenix Initiative," Gavin declared. "We will be dissolving the construction arm of the company and merging the assets into my firm, Thorn Capital." A murmur of surprise went through the room. Dissolving the construction company. He was killing my name. And Gavin pointed to the map. "These low-income housing blocks. They are inefficient. They are bleeding money. We have already found a buyer, a luxury condo developer who is ready to revitalize the area. We are selling the land. We are clearing the way for progress." My heart stopped. He wasn't just stealing my money. He was selling my people out. He was going to evict 300 families to build glass towers for the rich. He was going to bulldoze the community center. He was going to erase 50 years of my work in a single signature. I looked at the guests. They weren't horrified. They were nodding. They were calculating their cut. They were whispering about gentrification and property values. "Brilliant move," one man whispered near me. That land is a gold mine if you get rid of the tenants. Gavin is a genius, another said. Zeke sat on that gold mine for decades and did nothing. I sat there gripping the velvet arms of the chair. The anger was no longer a fire. It was a block of ice in my chest. Heavy and cold and sharp. Gavin raised his champagne glass. So, here is to Ezekiel Freeman, Gavin said. Thank you for building the foundation, Dad. But it is time for the new generation to build the penthouse. To Gavin, the crowd roared, raising their glasses. Gavin looked at me. He winked, a quick, arrogant wink that said I won. I looked back at him. I gave him a weak, tremulous smile. I raised my empty hand as if to toast him. Enjoy it, Gavin, I thought. Drink your champagne. Bask in the applause, because you just admitted to everything. I looked toward the corner of the room. Behind a large potted palm tree, I saw a shadow. Cyrus. He was wearing a tuxedo. He looked like just another guest. But he caught my eye. He tapped his ear. I knew what that meant. The camera was rolling, the microphone was live. But more importantly, the feed wasn't just going to a hard drive in the basement. Cyrus had hacked the projection system. Gavin was standing in front of the screen, basking in the glory. He didn't see what was happening behind him. The map of the South Side flickered. It was replaced by a video file, but the sound wasn't on yet. Not yet. I watched Gavin descend the stage, shaking hands, accepting back slaps. He walked toward me. Well, Dad, he said, crouching down next to my chair so we were eye to eye. What did you think? The Phoenix Initiative. Catchy name, right? You are selling the homes, I whispered. The families. Where will they go? Gavin laughed softly. He patted my cheek. Who cares, Dad? They are poor. They will move. That is what poor people do. They migrate. And we get rich. He stood up, straightening his suit. I'm going to get another drink. You stay here. Try not to drool on the velvet. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd of admirers. I sat there alone in the middle of the party, the mascot, the fool. But I wasn't looking at the floor anymore. I was looking at the screen behind the stage. The image on the screen changed again. It was no longer a map. It was a live feed from a camera that was pointed directly at the basement door, the door that was currently opening. I saw the guests near the front start to whisper. They pointed at the screen. What is that? Someone asked. Is that part of the presentation? Gavin turned around holding his glass of champagne. He looked at the screen. He frowned. What the hell, he muttered. Technical difficulties. He waved at the DJ booth. Cut the feed, he shouted. Put the logo back up. But the feed didn't cut. On the screen, a figure emerged from the basement. It was Cyrus, and he wasn't alone. He was holding a stack of red binders, and behind him walked two men in trench coats, men I recognized, detectives from the fraud division. Gavin dropped his glass. It shattered on the marble floor. The sound was sharp and final. I stood up. I didn't struggle. I didn't use the armrests. I stood up straight. I unbuttoned the tight collar of the shirt. I brushed the imaginary lint off my shoulder. The room went silent. They were looking at the screen. Then they looked at Gavin. Then they looked at me. I walked toward the stage. I didn't shuffle. I walked with the stride of a man who has walked through concrete and steel for 50 years. I walked up the stairs. I took the microphone from the stand. The feedback whined for a second, then cleared. Gavin stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, his face pale as a sheet. I looked out at the crowd. The vultures. The sharks. I hope you enjoyed the champagne, I said, my voice booming through the speakers, clear and strong and terrifyingly sane, because the party is over, and now it is time to pay the bill. The champagne in my hand was warm, but I held it like a weapon. I stood on the stage next to Gavin, watching him bask in the adoration of the room. He looked like a golden god. His suit was tailored to perfection, his hair was coiffed, and his smile was bright enough to light up the entire city of Chicago. He had just finished his speech about the Phoenix Initiative, about bulldozing the past to build the future. The crowd was roaring. They were clapping for the destruction of my legacy, and they didn't even know it. Gavin raised his hand for silence. He was enjoying this too much. He wanted to milk every second of his triumph. And now he said, his voice echoing through the massive ballroom. Before we continue with the music and the dancing, I want to share a montage, a tribute to the man who started it all. a look back at the life of Ezekiel Freeman. He pointed to the massive projection screen that hung behind us. The lights in the room dimmed. The crowd turned their eyes upward, expecting to see black and white photos of me pouring concrete in the 1970s. They expected to see sentimental pictures of Nia as a baby. They expected a tearjerker that would seal the narrative of the beloved retiring patriarch. And for a moment, that is what they saw. A picture of me and Ruby on our wedding day flashed on the screen. A collective awe went through the crowd. Gavin looked at me and squeezed my shoulder. "Look at that, Dad," he whispered. "You looked strong then." I didn't look at the screen. I looked at the tech booth in the back of the room. I saw a small red light blink on the main console. "Enjoy the show, Gavin," I whispered back. Suddenly the music cut out. The sentimental piano track that Gavin had chosen was replaced by a sharp burst of static. The image of my wedding day flickered, distorted, and then dissolved into white noise. A murmur of confusion rippled through the guests. Gavin frowned. He tapped his microphone. "Technical difficulties, folks," he joked nervously. "Just give us a second. We seem to have a gremlin in the system." He waved frantically at the DJ booth, making a cutting motion across his throat, but the static didn't stop. It cleared. And the image that resolved on the screen was not a photo. It was a live video feed. The camera was high-definition, crisp, and unforgiving. It showed a room with concrete walls and rows of computer servers. It showed a wall of monitors. It showed a workbench covered in blueprints. It was the basement, the secret fortress Gavin had built right under my feet. The crowd went silent. They didn't know what they were looking at. Was this the new office? Was this part of the future vision? Then a figure stepped into the frame. It was Cyrus. He was no longer wearing his tuxedo. He had stripped off the jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing the scars on his arms. He looked straight into the camera lens. His eyes were dark and intense. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. He reached down and picked up a large black binder. He held it up to the camera so everyone in the ballroom could read the label on the spine. "Project Sunset. Target Ezekiel Freeman." Gavin froze. I felt his hand drop from my shoulder. I heard his breath hitch in his throat. On the screen, Cyrus opened the binder. He flipped the pages slowly, deliberately, like a teacher showing a class a textbook. The camera zoomed in. The text was legible. Phase 1, isolate subject from spouse. Phase 2, induce paranoia via gaslighting. Phase 3, falsify medical records. Phase 4, asset liquidation. A gasp went through the room. The investors in the front row leaned forward, squinting. They were business people. They knew what a hostile takeover looked like, but they had never seen one planned like a military assassination. Gavin panicked. He ran toward the side of the stage, shouting at the technicians. "Turn it off. Cut the power. It is a hack. Someone is hacking the system." But the technicians were helpless. They were frantically typing on their keyboards, but the system was locked out. Cyrus had complete control. On the screen, Cyrus dropped the binder. It hit the floor with a thud that echoed through the speakers. Then he stepped aside. The video feed changed. It was no longer live. It was a recording. The timestamp in the corner read yesterday, 2:00 p.m. The scene was a bedroom, my bedroom. The camera angle was from the ceiling, hidden in the smoke detector. It showed the bed where I had slept for 40 years. It showed the quilt Ruby had stitched by hand, and it showed Ruby. My wife lay on the left side of the bed. She was asleep, deeply asleep. Her mouth was slightly open and her chest rose and fell in a slow, unnatural rhythm. The bottle of orange pills, the sedatives Gavin and his nurse had been feeding her, sat on the nightstand. The crowd watched in uncomfortable silence. Why were they seeing a sleeping woman? Then the door on the screen opened. 2 people walked in. One was Gavin. He was wearing his suit, the same suit he was wearing right now on stage. The other was Chloe the nurse, the woman who had blocked me from seeing my wife, the woman who had sneered at me in the hallway. They walked into the room, laughing. Not a quiet, respectful laugh, a loud, raucous laugh. Gavin walked over to the bed. He looked down at Ruby, my unconscious wife, his mother-in-law. "Is she out?" he asked on the video, his voice crystal clear. Chloe walked over and checked Ruby's pulse. She shook Ruby's shoulder roughly. Ruby didn't stir. She was comatose from the drugs. "She is out cold," Chloe said. "I gave her a double dose. She won't wake up until tomorrow morning." "Good," Gavin said. "I hate it when she starts whining about Zeke. Where is the old man?" Chloe giggled. He is in the garden staring at a rose bush. He thinks he is a botanist today. He is totally gone, Gavin. The plan is working perfectly." Gavin smiled. He reached out and grabbed Chloe, pulling her close. "You are a genius, baby," he said. "A few more days and we will have the papers, and then we can put them both in a home and sell this mausoleum." Chloe wrapped her arms around his neck. "And what about the wife?" she asked. "What about Naya?" Gavin shrugged. A casual, callous shrug that sent a shockwave of disgust through the ballroom. "Naya is soft," he said. "She will do whatever I tell her. Once I control the money, she will fall in line. She is just a stepping stone babe. You know that." Then right there on the screen next to my drugged wife, Gavin kissed her. It wasn't a quick peck. It was passionate. It was hungry. And then they fell onto the bed. My bed. Ruby's bed. They rolled onto the quilt inches away from Ruby's sleeping form. They began to undress. The ballroom erupted. It wasn't applause. It wasn't laughter. It was a sound of pure collective horror. A sound of 300 people realizing they were witnessing a moral crime so deep it made their stomachs turn. "Oh my God!" someone screamed. "Turn it off!" "Turn it off!" another voice yelled. On the stage, Gavin was clawing at the screen, trying to pull it down with his bare hands. He looked like a madman. No, it is deep fake. It is AI. It is not real," he screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. But no one was looking at him. They were looking at the screen where the video continued mercilessly. They were seeing the man they had just toasted betraying his wife, his father-in-law, and his own humanity. I didn't move. I stood perfectly still on the stage, my hands clasped behind my back. I watched the video. I had seen it already, of course. I had watched it with Cyrus in the basement, and I had wept tears of rage. But now watching it here, surrounded by the elite of Chicago, I felt no tears. I felt only the cold, hard satisfaction of a judge delivering a death sentence. Then I heard a sound that cut through the chaos. Smash! It was the sound of crystal shattering against marble. I looked down at the front row. Naya was standing there. Her face was pale, drained of all blood. Her eyes were wide, staring at the screen with a look of absolute devastation. At her feet lay the shattered remains of her wine glass. The red wine splashed across the hem of her expensive cream-colored dress, looking like a spray of arterial blood. She was trembling. Her hands were shaking so hard she couldn't make a fist. She looked up at the stage, not at me. At Gavin. Gavin turned around, panting, sweating his hair wild. He saw her. "Nia," he gasped. "Nia, listen to me. It is not what it looks like. It is a fabrication." The old man, he made it up. He used technology. Nia didn't speak. She took a step back, then another. She looked like she was going to be sick. The room was deadly silent now. The video on the screen had frozen on a frame of Gavin's face laughing while my wife lay unconscious next to him. Gavin looked out at the crowd. He saw the disgust in their eyes. He saw the investors turning their backs. He saw the politicians shaking their heads. He looked at me. "You," he hissed, pointing a shaking finger. "You did this. You senile old bat. You ruined everything." I took a step forward. I picked up the microphone again. I didn't shout. I didn't scream. I spoke with the calm authority of a man who owns the building, the land, and the ground beneath it. "I did not ruin anything, Gavin," I said. "I just turned on the lights." I looked down at Nia. "I am sorry you had to see that baby girl," I said softly into the mic. "But you needed to know who was sleeping in your bed." Nia let out a sob that tore through the silence. She collapsed to her knees amidst the broken glass and the spilled wine, burying her face in her hands. Gavin lunged at me. "I am going to kill you," he screamed, but he never reached me. From the shadows of the wings, two men stepped out. They were not waiters. They were not guests. They wore navy blue windbreakers with yellow lettering on the back. FBI. They intercepted Gavin mid-stride, tackling him to the ground. The microphone stand toppled over with a loud clang. Gavin thrashed and screamed, cursing and spitting, but the agents were professionals. They pinned his arms behind his back. The sound of handcuffs ratcheting shut was the sweetest music I had ever heard. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice steady over the chaos, "please excuse the interruption." I walked to the edge of the stage and looked down at my daughter, but as I said earlier, the party is over. I jumped down from the stage. I didn't use the stairs. I landed on my feet with a thud. I walked over to Nia and knelt down, ignoring the wine that soaked into the knees of my gray suit. I wrapped my arms around her. She clung to me, weeping uncontrollably. "I have got you, baby," I whispered. "Daddy is here. Daddy is back, and I am not going anywhere." Behind us, the police were dragging Gavin away. He was still screaming about conspiracies, about fake videos, about how he was the victim. But no one was listening. The guests were already leaving, filing out in silence, their heads down, ashamed to have been part of his charade. I held my daughter while her world fell apart, knowing that I was the one who had pulled the pin on the grenade. But it was necessary destruction. Sometimes you have to burn the house down to get rid of the rot. I looked up at the screen. The video had stopped. Now it just showed the logo of the Freeman Construction Company, a phoenix rising from the ashes. The irony was not lost on me. Gavin wanted a phoenix initiative. Well, he got one. He burned, and I rose. The ballroom was vibrating with the kind of silence that usually follows a gunshot. The video on the massive screen had frozen on the image of Gavin laughing while my wife lay unconscious, but the echo of his betrayal was still bouncing off the crystal chandeliers. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. It was a tableau of absolute destruction. Then Gavin snapped. He didn't break down crying. He didn't fall to his knees in repentance. He exploded with the frantic energy of a rat that knows the trap is snapped shut. He lunged toward the tech booth at the side of the stage, his face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. "Cut the feed," he screamed, his voice cracking and high-pitched. "Is there nobody competent in this entire building? Turn it off. Kill the power." The technicians were backing away from the console, their hands raised in the air. They knew better than to touch anything. They had seen Cyrus on the screen, and they knew who was really in control. Gavin spun around to face the crowd. He looked like a man drowning. He pointed a shaking finger at the screen. "This is fake," he yelled, sweat pouring down his forehead. "This is AI. It is a deep fake. You all know what technology can do these days. It is a fabrication." He looked at the investors in the front row, his eyes pleading. "You know me," he begged. "You know I would never do this. This is a setup. It is a smear campaign." But nobody was looking at him. They were looking at the floor, or they were looking at me. They were shrinking away from him as if he had a contagious disease. Gavin turned to me. His eyes were wild. He saw me standing there, still calm, still watching him, and that calmness broke him. "You," he hissed. "You senile old bastard. You did this." He stomped toward me, his hands balled into fists. "You are crazy," he shouted, spitting the words out. "You are out of your mind. You don't even know what day it is. You think this proves something. It proves nothing. You are a vegetable Zeke. You are a sick, confused old man who needs to be locked up." He was trying to use his old weapon. He was trying to gaslight me one last time in front of everyone. He thought if he screamed loud enough about my dementia, people would believe him over their own eyes. But the weapon didn't work anymore. I looked at him. I really looked at him. And for the first time in months, I let the mask fall. I didn't hunch my shoulders. I didn't let my mouth hang open. I didn't let my hands tremble. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the air of my own house. I rolled my neck, hearing the satisfying crack of vertebrae aligning. I straightened my spine. I seemed to grow 3 inches in height right there on the stage. The transformation was physical, but it was also spiritual. The fog I had pretended to live in evaporated. The weakness I had worn like a costume fell away. I reached up and unbuttoned the top button of the gray suit jacket Gavin had forced me to wear. I shrugged it off my shoulders, letting it fall to the floor. Underneath, I was wearing a crisp white shirt. I rolled up the sleeves, revealing the thick forearms of a man who had built half of Chicago with a shovel and a trowel. I walked toward Gavin. I didn't shuffle. I didn't drag my feet. I walked with the heavy, deliberate rhythm of a predator. My boots echoed on the wooden stage. Thud, thud, thud. Gavin stopped moving. He took a step back. He looked at me, and for the first time, he saw the truth. He saw the eyes of Ezekiel Freeman. Not the patient, not the victim. The boss. The crowd saw it too. A gasp rippled through the room. They were watching a resurrection. I walked past Gavin. I didn't even look at him. I walked straight to the microphone stand that he had knocked over. I bent down and picked it up. I set it straight. I adjusted the height. I tapped the microphone once. Thump. The sound was deep and resonant. I leaned in close to the mic. My voice when I spoke was not the scratchy whisper of an old man. It was the rumble of a thunderstorm. "You are right, Gavin," I said. My voice filled the room, commanding absolute attention. "I am old." I paused, looking out at the sea of faces. I looked at the bankers who had denied me. I looked at the politicians who had used me. And I looked at Gavin, who was trembling like a leaf. I am 74 years old, I continued. My back hurts when it rains, my hands are scarred, and sometimes I forget where I put my reading glasses. I turned my head slowly to look Gavin dead in the eye. But do you know why I am old, Gavin? Gavin didn't answer. He couldn't speak. He was paralyzed by the sheer weight of my presence. I am old because I survived, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous growl. I survived the riots of '68. I survived the recession of 2008. I survived partners who stole from me and politicians who tried to break me. I took a step closer to him, invading his personal space, forcing him to look up at me. I am old because I have lived longer than every single idiot who thought they were smart enough to take what is mine. The line hit him like a physical blow. He flinched. You thought I was weak because I was silent, I said. You thought I was stupid because I was slow. But I wasn't slow, son. I was patient. I was waiting for you to dig your own grave. And tonight, you just finished the hole. Gavin shook his head, tears of frustration welling in his eyes. You can't prove anything, he stammered. The video, it is inadmissible. It is illegal surveillance. My lawyer will have this thrown out in 5 minutes. You have nothing, Zeke. You have a movie. That is it. I smiled. It was a cold, wolfish smile. I don't need the video, Gavin, I said. I raised my hand and snapped my fingers. The sound was sharp like a whip crack. The double doors at the back of the ballroom burst open. The guests turned around. Entering the room was not a catering team. It was a phalanx of uniformed officers and 2 men in suits who walked with the unmistakable swagger of federal agents. One of them was the detective I had met in the basement on the video feed, Detective Miller. They marched down the center aisle. The crowd parted for them, creating a wide path straight to the stage. Gavin looked at the police. Then he looked at the side exits. Don't even think about it, I said softly. Cyrus welded the side doors shut an hour ago. The only way out of here is in handcuffs. Gavin panicked. He turned to the crowd, seeking an ally, anyone who would help him. This is a mistake, he screamed, pointing at the police. Get them out of here. I am the CEO of Thorn Capital. You can't touch me. Detective Miller walked up the stairs onto the stage. He didn't look impressed. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. Gavin Thorn, he said, his voice flat and professional. I have a warrant for your arrest. Arrest? Gavin laughed hysterically. For what? Adultery. That is not a crime. Detective Miller unfolded the warrant. He began to read. You are under arrest for 18 counts of wire fraud, 12 counts of money laundering, identify theft, forgery of legal documents. Gavin turned pale, but the detective wasn't finished. And we are adding a charge of attempted murder in the 1st degree. The room went dead silent again. Murder. The word hung in the air. Murder, Gavin whispered. Who did I murder? Nobody is dead. I stepped forward. Not yet, I said. I pulled the orange pill bottle from my pocket, the one Cyrus had swapped. We analyzed the pills, Gavin, I said, holding the bottle up to the light. The ones you were forcing down Ruby's throat. The ones you told Dr. Eris to prescribe. I looked at him with disgust. You were giving a woman with a heart condition 3 times the lethal dose of sedatives mixed with beta blockers. You weren't treating her dementia. You were stopping her heart. You were killing her slowly so she would die in her sleep before the divorce papers could be filed. Gavin's knees gave out. He collapsed onto the stage. He looked up at me, shaking his head. No, he sobbed. No. It was just to keep her calm. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to, what I asked, crouching down so I could whisper in his ear. You didn't mean to get caught. I stood up and looked at the detective. Get him out of my house. He is dirtying the floor. Detective Miller nodded to the uniformed officers. They moved in. They grabbed Gavin by the arms and hauled him up. He was dead weight. He was sobbing now, crying like a child begging for mercy. Dad, please, he wailed, looking at me. Please. I am family. I am your son. Don't let them take me. I looked at him. I felt nothing. The love I had once tried to have for him was gone, burned away by the truth. I don't have a son, I said coldly. I looked over at Naya, who was still standing by the stage, her face wet with tears. I have a daughter, I said, and she deserves better than a murderer. The officers dragged him away. He kicked and screamed, shouting threats, shouting apologies, shouting nonsense. The sound of his voice faded as they dragged him out the main doors and into the waiting police van. The ballroom was quiet. The purple lights were still spinning, the DJ equipment was still humming, but the party was over. I stood alone on the stage. I looked at the crowd. They were looking at me with fear. They were wondering if they were next. They were wondering if I had files on them too, and they were right to wonder. I walked back to the microphone. I picked up my glass of champagne from the podium where I had left it. It was flat now, but I didn't care. I raised the glass. To the truth, I said. I drank it in one gulp. Then I threw the glass on the floor. It shattered, joining the pieces of Nia's broken heart and Gavin's broken life. I turned and walked off the stage. I walked toward my daughter. I had a company to rebuild. I had a wife to wake up. And I had a life to live. The mask was gone. Ezekiel Freeman was back. And God help anyone who stood in my way. The interrogation room was cold. It was a deliberate cold designed to make men shiver and break, but Gavin Thorne was sweating through his Italian silk suit. I stood behind the one-way mirror watching him pace back and forth like a caged tiger. He was screaming at Detective Miller, demanding his phone, demanding his lawyer, demanding to be released immediately. He still believed he was the smartest man in the room. He still believed that money and a white smile could fix anything. He had called the most expensive defense attorney in Chicago, a man named Sterling, who charged $1,000 an hour to make problems disappear. Sterling was sitting at the metal table looking bored, tapping his pen on a yellow legal pad. He hadn't said a word yet. He was waiting for the police to show their hand because he assumed the police had nothing but a video that could be challenged in court. I turned to the man standing next to me. He was short, balding, and wore a suit that looked like it had been bought off the rack at a discount store 20 years ago. He carried a battered leather briefcase that smelled of old paper and tobacco. His name was Solomon Katz. We had grown up together on the South Side. I built the buildings and Solomon wrote the contracts. He was retired now, living in Florida, but when I called him 3 days ago, he was on the first plane to Chicago. People underestimated Solomon because he looked like a grandfather who fed pigeons in the park, but I knew the truth. Solomon was a shark. He just didn't show his teeth until he was tearing your throat out. "Ready, Saul?" I asked. Solomon adjusted his glasses and smiled. "Let us go teach this boy a lesson about the law, Zeke." We walked around the hallway and Detective Miller opened the heavy steel door. Gavin stopped pacing when we entered. His eyes widened. He looked at me with a mixture of hatred and fear, but then he looked at Solomon and he laughed. A short, sharp bark of a laugh. "Who is this?" he sneered, pointing at Solomon. "Is this your lawyer, Zeke? Did you find him in a nursing home?" Sterling, the expensive lawyer, looked up. He recognized Solomon. I saw the color drain from his face. He sat up straighter, closing his legal pad. "Mr. Katz," he said, his voice respectful, almost fearful. "I didn't know you were representing Mr. Freeman." Solomon didn't answer. He just walked to the table and sat down. He placed his briefcase on the table and clicked the latches open. Snap, snap. The sound echoed like gunshots in the small room. Gavin looked confused. He looked at his own lawyer. "You know this guy?" he asked. Sterling nodded. "Mr. Katz was the lead prosecutor on the Enron cases, Gavin. He is a legend." Gavin swallowed hard. The arrogance flickered but didn't die. "I don't care who he is," Gavin snapped. "The arrest is unlawful. The video evidence is fruit of the poisonous tree. It was obtained via illegal surveillance in my own home. You can't use it." Solomon took a slow breath. He pulled a single piece of paper from his briefcase. "You are right, Mr. Thorne," Solomon said, his voice soft and raspy. "The video might be challenged. Privacy laws are tricky things." Gavin smirked. He looked at me triumphantly. "See, Zeke, even your dinosaur lawyer knows you messed up. You have nothing." Solomon ignored him. However, he continued, "The video is not why you are here. The video is just for the jury to see your character. You are here because of the money." "Money?" Gavin laughed. "What money?" "I haven't spent a dime of the estate yet. The conservatorship was just granted today." Solomon pulled out a stack of documents. They were bank statements. But they weren't from First City Bank of Chicago. They were blue and yellow with the logo of a palm tree. "The Cayman Islands," Solomon said. "A beautiful place. I used to vacation there. They have very strict banking secrecy laws." He slid the papers across the table. "Unless, of course, the bank is acquired by a parent company that chooses to audit its own internal accounts." Gavin looked at the papers. His hands started to shake. "Alpha Shell Corporation," Solomon read from his own copy. "Registered in Georgetown. Sole beneficiary Gavin Thorne. I watched Gavin's eyes scan the columns of numbers. You transferred $2 million from the construction company's emergency fund 3 months ago, Solomon said. You labeled it as vendor payments for materials, but no materials were purchased. The money went through 3 shell companies and ended up here. Gavin looked up, sweat dripping from his nose. That was a consulting fee, he stammered. Zeke authorized it. He told me to take a bonus for managing the merger. Did he? Solomon asked. Yes, Gavin shouted, slamming his hand on the table. Yes, he did. He signed the authorization. I have the papers. Gavin turned to Sterling. Show them. Show them the power of attorney. Show them the transfer authorization. Sterling opened his briefcase and pulled out the documents. He looked relieved to have something to fight with. My client is correct, Mr. Katz, Sterling said, sliding a document toward us. Here is the authorization for the transfer signed by Ezekiel Freeman, dated August 12th. And here is the power of attorney signed 3 days ago. Mr. Freeman was lucid and voluntary when he signed these. I stepped forward. I leaned over the table, casting a long shadow over Gavin. Look at the signature, Gavin, I said. Gavin looked. It is your signature, old man. I watched you sign it. Look closer, I said. I pointed to the E in Ezekiel, and the F in Freeman. For 50 years I have signed my name the exact same way I said. I use a loop on the top of the E, and I cross the F with a straight line. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my driver's license. I threw it on the table. Compare them. Gavin looked at the license. Then he looked at the document. On the license, the E had a loop. On the document, the E was sharp-pointed. On the license, the F was crossed straight. On the document, the F was crossed with a slight upward slant. So, what? Gavin scoffed. You are old. Your hand shakes. Your signature changed. That proves nothing. It proves you are degrading. I shook my head. Solomon pulled out another file, a thick black binder. This is an affidavit from a forensic handwriting analyst, Solomon said. And this is a sworn statement from Mr. Freeman's neurologist, the real one. Not the one you paid off, real neurologist, Gavin whispered. I have been seeing a specialist for 6 months, Gavin, I said. Ever since you started asking about my will. I wanted to make sure I was sharp. I scored perfect on every test. I don't have dementia. I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. But 3 months ago, when I realized you were stealing, I started a little game. I decided to change my signature. Just for you. I pointed at the incriminating document. Every time you put a piece of paper in front of me that was part of your scam, I used the pointed E and the slanted F. Every time I signed a legitimate check for the business, I used my real signature. Solomon tapped the paper. We have 3 months of documents, Gavin. Every single fraudulent transfer. Every single fake medical form. Every single authorization for your shell companies. They all have the trap signature. The trap signature, Gavin breathed. It proves intent. Solomon said, closing the trap. It proves that Mr. Freeman was not confused. He was conducting a sting operation. It proves that he knew exactly what you were doing, and he let you do it so he could document the theft. I watched the realization wash over Gavin. He wasn't the puppeteer. He was the puppet. He had been dancing on my strings the whole time, thinking he was leading the show. Sterling closed his folder. He moved his chair slightly away from Gavin. You didn't tell me he was using a variation on his signature, Sterling said quietly. I didn't know, Gavin whispered. Sterling stood up. I cannot represent a client who withholds material evidence regarding fraud. I am withdrawing from this case. He looked at Solomon. Good to see you again, Mr. Katz. Give my regards to your wife. Sterling walked out. The door closed. Gavin was alone. Alone with the police. Alone with the lawyer who had destroyed Enron. And alone with the father-in-law he had tried to bury. He looked at me. His eyes were red. He looked like a child who had broken a window and knew a whipping was coming. Dad, he whimpered. Please, I can fix it. I will pay it back. I still have the money. We can make a deal. Think of Nia. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had slept with my daughter while plotting to kill her mother. I am thinking of Nia, I said. I turned to Detective Miller. He is all yours, Detective. The fraud is federal. The attempted murder is state. I suggest you book him on both and let the judges fight over who gets to sentence him first. Detective Miller nodded. He stood up and handcuffed Gavin to the table. Zeke, Gavin screamed as I turned to leave. Zeke, don't leave me here. I can't go to prison. I am not built for prison. I stopped at the door. I looked back one last time. "You are right, Gavin," I said. "You are not built for prison. You are built for luxury. You are built for soft sheets and expensive wine." I smiled, a cold, hard smile. "That is why it is going to be so much fun watching you rot." I walked out into the hallway. Solomon walked beside me, clutching his briefcase. "That went well," Solomon said, checking his watch. "In time for a late dinner. I know a good deli on 5th Street. I put my arm around my old friend's shoulder. "Dinner is on me, Sol, and order the expensive wine. I just saved $50 million. We walked away, leaving the screams of the golden boy fading behind the steel door. Justice wasn't just blind. Sometimes it played the long game, and sometimes it signed its name with a slanted F. The silence in the house after the police left was heavier than the noise of the sirens. The guests were gone. The waiters had packed up the broken glass and the spilled wine, but the stain on the carpet remained. I stood in the hallway, listening to the sound of the house settling. For weeks, this house had been a battlefield filled with spies and cameras and hidden agendas. Now it was just a house again, but it felt empty. I walked up the stairs. My legs felt heavy, not from age, but from the sheer emotional exhaustion of the night. I walked past the master bedroom where Ruby was still sleeping peacefully, unaware that her husband had just saved her life. I would wake her in the morning. I would hold her hand and tell her everything. But tonight there was another woman I needed to save. I walked to Nia's old bedroom. The door was open. Inside, the room looked like a hurricane had hit it. Suitcases were open on the bed. Clothes were thrown everywhere. Nia was moving frantically, grabbing dresses from the closet, throwing shoes into a pile. She wasn't packing. She was fleeing. She had changed out of her wine-stained dress. She was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Her face was scrubbed clean of makeup, but her eyes were red and swollen. She didn't hear me come in. She was muttering to herself, a low stream of self-hatred. "Stupid. So stupid. How could you be so stupid, Nia?" I knocked on the door frame, a soft, gentle knock. Nia froze. She didn't turn around, her shoulders hunched up as if she expected a blow. "Go away, Dad," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, just go away." I walked into the room. I stepped over a pile of high heels. I sat down on the edge of the bed right next to her open suitcase. "Where are you going, baby girl?" I asked. She shoved a sweater into the bag with violent force. "I don't know," she sobbed. "A hotel? A shelter? It doesn't matter. I just can't be here. I can't look at you." "Why?" I asked. She spun around. Her face was a mask of anguish. "Why?" she screamed. "Because I almost killed you, Dad. I almost signed the papers that would have put you in a home and left Mom to die. I believed him. I believed a monster over my own father." She fell to her knees, burying her face in the mattress. "I am a lawyer." She wept. "I am supposed to know when people are lying. I am supposed to protect the innocent." And I helped him. "I helped him hurt you. I don't deserve to be your daughter. I don't deserve this house. I don't deserve anything." I sat there watching her cry. I remembered when she was 5 years old and she broke my favorite vase. She had hidden in the closet for 3 hours, terrified that I would stop loving her. I had to crawl in there with her and hold her until she fell asleep. She was 32 now, but she was still that little girl hiding in the dark. I stood up. I walked over to her and placed my hand on her head. "Get up, Nia," I said. She shook her head. "No, I can't." "Get up," I repeated, my voice firm but kind. "Leave the bag. We are going for a walk." She looked up at me confused. "A walk? It is 2 a.m. I took her hand and pulled her to her feet. She was limp, offering no resistance. "Come with me," I said. I led her out of the room. We walked down the hallway, down the grand staircase, through the silent ballroom where the ghost of Gavin's arrest still lingered. I led her to the kitchen and then to the heavy door at the back of the pantry. The basement door. Nia stopped. She pulled back. "No, Dad," she whispered. "I can't go down there. That is where you saw everything. That is where the hate is." "It is not a place of hate," I said, opening the door. "It is a place of truth. Come on." We walked down the stairs. The air was cool. The servers were still humming. The monitors were dark now except for one screen that showed the front gate, ensuring no reporters were sneaking in. Cyrus was gone. He had gone to the guest cottage to finally get some sleep. We were alone. Nia looked around, shivering. She hugged herself. "This is where you hid," she said. while we were upstairs planning your funeral. I didn't answer. I walked past the computer banks. I walked past the whiteboard with the Project Sunset diagram. I walked to the far wall where my old workbench stood. It was a scarred wooden table covered in oil stains and saw marks. It was the table where I had planned my first construction job 50 years ago. Under the table was a safe. Not a digital safe like the one Gavin had installed upstairs. This was an old iron safe, heavy and rusted with a mechanical dial. I knelt down. My knees cracked, but I didn't mind. I spun the dial. Left, right, left. Click. The heavy door creaked open. Nia was standing behind me, watching warily. "What is in there?" she asked. "Is it money? Is it the gold bars Gavin thought you had?" I reached inside. I pulled out a stack of books. They were not ledgers. They were not bank books. They were simple black notebooks, the kind you buy at a drugstore for $1. The covers were worn, the corners bent. There were about 50 of them. I stood up and placed the stack on the workbench. I blew a layer of dust off the top one. "I didn't keep the money in the safe, Nia," I said. "The money is in the bank. The deeds are with the lawyers." I picked up the top notebook. I opened it. The pages were yellowed. The ink faded. I handed it to her. "Read the first page," I said. Nia took the book. Her hands were trembling. She squinted at my handwriting, which was stronger and sharper back then. "October 14th, 1992, she read aloud. "Today Nia took her first step. She fell down and bumped her head. She cried for a minute, but then she got back up. She has the Freeman chin. She is going to be a fighter. I promised her today that I would build a world where she never has to be afraid of falling again." Nia looked up at me, tears welling in her eyes again. "What is this?" she whispered. "Read another one," I said, picking up a book from the middle of the stack. She opened it randomly. June 20th, 2005. She read, "Nia had her first heartbreak today. Some boy named Marcus broke up with her before the dance. I wanted to go find him and scare him, but Ruby told me to let her handle it. I hate seeing her cry. I worked a double shift today pouring concrete for the new hospital. Every bag of cement I lift, I think about her. I am building this for her so she never has to depend on a boy like Marcus for anything." Nia flipped the pages faster now, devouring the words. September 2018. Nia passed the bar exam. "I have never been prouder. She is smarter than me. She fights with words, not bricks. But I worry. She is so trusting. She sees the good in everyone. I have to stay strong for her. I have to keep building the wall around the garden so the wolves don't get in." She dropped the book. She grabbed another one, and another. They were journals, decades of them. Every major moment of her life, every fear I had, every prayer I whispered while I was covered in dust and sweat on a construction site. She looked at me. Her eyes were wide with a realization that hit her harder than any slap. "You wrote about me," she choked out. "All of it. It was always about me." I stepped closer to her. I took her hands in mine. They were cold, but I rubbed them to bring the warmth back. "Gavin looked at this house and saw real estate," I said softly. "He looked at my bank account and saw a score. He looked at you and saw a key to unlock the vault." I let go of her hands and gestured to the notebooks. "But I looked at you, and I saw the only thing that mattered." I picked up the last notebook, the one I had been writing in this week. I opened it to the last entry written just hours before the party. "Nia is lost right now. She is blinded by a man who knows how to say the right things. She thinks she is betraying me. She doesn't know that I am breaking my own heart to save her. I will take the humiliation. I will play the fool. Because a father's job isn't just to provide, it is to protect, even when she doesn't want to be protected." Nia broke down. She didn't turn away this time. She threw her arms around my neck, burying her face in the rough wool of my sweater. "I am so sorry, Daddy," she wailed. "I am so sorry. I should have known. I should have seen him." I held her tight, rocking her back and forth like I did when she was a baby. "Shh," I whispered. "It is okay. You didn't see him because you have a good heart. You project your own goodness onto other people. That is not a weakness, Nia. That is your strength." I pulled back and looked her in the eye. I needed her to hear this. I needed her to understand the philosophy that had guided my life. "Listen to me, Nia." I pointed to the stack of journals. I didn't keep the assets to take them down to the grave with me. I didn't fight Gavin because I am a greedy old man who loves money. I cupped her face in my hands, wiping away a tear with my thumb. I kept the power to ensure that no bad man could ever use money to make you suffer. I knew men like Gavin existed. I met them on construction sites. I met them in boardrooms. Men who think women are property and families are corporations. I took a deep breath, my voice trembling with the intensity of my love. I held onto the keys not to lock you out, but to lock them out. I wanted you to have the freedom to love who you want without worrying about who pays the bills. But when I saw him trying to steal that freedom, I had to become the monster he thought I was. Nia sniffed, nodding slowly. I see it now, she whispered. I see it all. I looked around the basement. The war room was silent. The battle was over. You don't have to leave, Nia, I said. You don't have to pack a bag. This is your house. It was built for you. Every brick, every beam, every dollar in the bank. It is yours. But I failed you, she said, looking down. No, I said, lifting her chin. You learned. You survived. And now you know the truth. That is not failure. That is growing up. I picked up the notebook from 1992. I handed it to her. Take this one upstairs, I said. Read it tonight. Remember who you are. You are a freeman. We don't run away when we make mistakes. We fix them. Nia took the book, holding it to her chest like a shield. What do we do now, Daddy? She asked. I smiled. A tired but genuine smile. Now, I said, putting my arm around her shoulder. We go upstairs. We turn off the lights, and we get some sleep. Because tomorrow morning your mother is going to wake up, and she is going to need both of us to tell her that the nightmare is over. We walked toward the stairs, leaving the safe open. The journals remained there, a testament to a love that was stronger than concrete, deeper than a basement, and more valuable than $50 million. As we climbed the stairs, I heard Nia whisper one last thing. I love you, Daddy. I squeezed her shoulder. I know, baby girl. I know. And that was the only validation I needed. Gavin was in a cell. My fortune was safe. But my daughter was back. And that was the greatest victory of all. The visiting room at the Cook County Jail smelled of industrial bleach and desperation. It was a smell I knew well from my youth, not because I had been a criminal, but because I had visited too many friends who had fallen through the cracks of a system designed to crush them. But today I was not walking in as a helpless young man. I was walking in as a king coming to inspect a dungeon. I wore my best suit today, a navy blue three-piece tailored in London. I wore my gold watch, the heavy one that caught the light. I wanted Gavin to see exactly what success looked like. I wanted him to see the difference between borrowed power and earned power. I sat down on the metal stool. It was bolted to the floor. Everything in here was bolted down because men in cages tend to break things. On the other side of the thick plexiglass partition sat a man who looked like a stranger. Gavin Thorne had been in custody for 3 weeks. In those 3 weeks, the golden boy of Chicago finance had disintegrated. His hair, usually styled with $50 gel, was greasy and matted. His skin was sallow, the color of old parchment. He had lost weight. His prison jumpsuit hung off his frame like a sack. But the biggest change was in his eyes. The arrogance was gone. The shine of the predator was gone, replaced by the darting, terrified look of prey. He picked up the phone receiver. His hand was shaking. I could see bruises on his knuckles and a fresh cut above his eyebrow. I picked up my receiver. "Hello, Gavin," I said. My voice was calm, level. "Dad," he croaked. His voice was raspy, like he had been screaming or crying or both. "Dad, you have to get me out of here. You have to help me. They know who I am in here." I leaned forward. "Who are you, Gavin?" I asked. He swallowed hard, looking over his shoulder at the guard standing by the door. "They know I am the guy who tried to kill his mother-in-law," he whispered. "They don't like that, Dad. Even the animals in here. They have codes. They say hurting old ladies is bad luck." He held up his hand, showing me the bruises. "My cellmate. He is a guy from the South Side. Big guy. He asked me if I knew Zeke Freeman. I told him yes. I told him I was family. I thought it would help." Gavin let out a sob. He laughed, "Dad. He said Zeke Freeman built the community center where his daughter takes ballet. He said Zeke Freeman is a saint. And then he smashed my head against the wall. He said that was a down payment." I listened without blinking. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. "The streets talk, Gavin," I said, "and the streets have a long memory. You thought you were playing in a boardroom, but you were playing in my backyard. Gavin leaned his forehead against the glass. "Please," he begged. "I can't survive in here. I am not like you. I am soft. I need protective custody. I need bail. Talk to the judge. Tell him it was a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding," I repeated. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a newspaper. I held it up to the glass. The headline was bold and black. "Venture capital star charged in elder abuse scandal. Thorn Capital dissolves." I read the first paragraph aloud. The board of directors of Thorn Capital issued a statement today distancing themselves from former CEO Gavin Thorn, citing a zero-tolerance policy for criminal misconduct. All of Mr. Thorn's assets have been seized pending the investigation. I put the paper down. "You are fired, Gavin. You are broke. And you are famous. But not in the way you wanted." Gavin squeezed his eyes shut. "It gets worse," I said mercilessly. I pulled out a transcript. A police interrogation log. "Chloe Vance," I said. "Your nurse. Your lover. Your partner in crime." Gavin's eyes snapped open. She wouldn't talk," he stammered. "She loves me. We had a plan." I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "There is no love in a plea bargain, son. As soon as they showed her the video of you two in the bedroom, she cracked. She sang like a bird." I looked at the transcript. "She told them everything, Gavin. She told them about the pills. She told them about the forged medical logs, but the most interesting part was the financial arrangement." I looked him in the eye. "She said you promised her 10%, I said. 10% of my estate. $5 million. That was the price of my wife's life. You put a bounty on Ruby's head." Gavin shook his head violently. "She is lying. She is trying to save herself. It was her idea. The pills were her idea. It doesn't matter whose idea it was," I said, "because you signed the checks. And now she is the star witness for the prosecution. She is going to walk away with 5 years probation, and you are looking at 20 years to life." Gavin slumped on his stool. He looked defeated, broken. "Why are you here, Zeke?" he whispered. "If you hate me so much, why did you come? To gloat, to watch me bleed." I paused. I looked at the man who had tried to erase me. I thought about the names he had called me. Uneducated. Savage. Relic. "I am here to settle accounts," I said. I opened my briefcase again. I pulled out a single document. It was a deed. A property deed. "Do you recognize this address?" I asked, holding it up. Gavin squinted. His eyes widened in recognition. That is my parents' house," he said. "In Connecticut. The lake house." I nodded. "Nice place," I said. 5 bedrooms. Waterfront view. Your father bought it in 2008, right before the crash. He leveraged everything to get it." Gavin looked confused. So what he asked, "What does that have to do with me?" "Your parents are proud people, Gavin," I said. "They spent a lot of money sending you to Ivy League schools. They spent a lot of money keeping up appearances, but the truth is, they are drowning in debt." I tapped the paper. "They took out a second mortgage to pay for your legal defense fees last week. Did you know that? They bet the house on you. Again." Gavin started to cry, silent tears running down his dirty face. "They love me," he choked out. "They are trying to save me, but the bank turned them down," I said. "Your father's credit score is shot. The bank was going to foreclose. They were going to kick your mother and father out on the street next month." Gavin looked at me with a flicker of hope. Did you help them?" he asked. "Did you pay it off?" I smiled. The same cold smile I had worn when I walked onto the stage. "I bought the note, Gavin," I said. "I didn't pay it off for them. I bought the debt from the bank." I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a whisper that vibrated through the glass. "I am the bank now." Gavin's jaw dropped. You own my parents' house," he whispered. "I own the mortgage," I corrected. "And I own the arrears, which means I own their future." I sat back, adjusting my cufflinks. "You called me a lot of things, Gavin. You called me a dumb black man. You called me uneducated. You made fun of the way I talk. You made fun of my rough hands." I held up my hands. "They were strong, capable hands. Well, this uneducated man just bought your family's legacy." I stood up. I put the papers back in my briefcase. "Your parents are living in a house where I am the landlord, Gavin. Every time they turn on the lights, they are using my electricity. Every time they sleep, they are sleeping under my roof. And do you know what the best part is?" Gavin stared at me horrified. I am not going to evict them, I said. I am going to let them stay. I am going to let them live there knowing that their son's failure is the only reason they have a roof over their heads. I am going to let them send me a check every month. A check signed with gratitude to Ezekiel Freeman. And every time they visit you in here, every time they look at you through this glass, they are going to remember that the man you tried to destroy is the man who owns the bed they sleep in. Gavin slammed his fist against the glass. You are a monster, he screamed. Leave them out of this. It is between you and me. It was never between you and me, I said calmly. You made it about family. You attacked my wife. You used my daughter. You declared war on the Freeman bloodline. I turned to walk away. So I conquered the Thorn bloodline. That is how war works, son, Zeke Gavin screamed, standing up. Zeke, wait. Please, I will do anything. I will plead guilty. Just don't tell them. Don't tell my father. I stopped at the door. The guard opened it for me. I looked back at the pathetic figure in the orange jumpsuit. I don't have to tell them, Gavin, I said. They already know. I sent them a fruit basket this morning, with a copy of the deed. I walked out into the hallway. The heavy steel door clanged shut, cutting off his screams. I walked out of the jail and into the bright sunlight of the Chicago afternoon. The air tasted sweet. I took out my phone. I had a text from Nia. Mom is awake. She is asking for you. I typed back. On my way. I got into my truck, not the Mercedes. My old Ford pickup, the one that smelled of sawdust and hard work. I started the engine. It roared to life. I drove away, leaving the past in the rearview mirror where it belonged, locked in a cage, bankrupt, and owned. My name is Ezekiel Freeman, and I am finally free. The adrenaline of the night was finally fading, leaving behind a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. The police vans had driven away with their lights flashing against the dark Chicago sky, taking Gavin Thorne to a place where his Italian suits and silver tongue would buy him absolutely nothing. The guests had scattered like roaches when the lights turned on, leaving only the echoes of their judgment in the ballroom. I walked down the hallway toward the library. The house was quiet now, but it was a good quiet. It was the silence of a fortress that had withstood a siege. I wanted a drink, not water, not tea. I wanted the best bottle of wine in the house. I walked into the library. The room was dim, lit only by the amber glow of the desk lamp. Nia was already there. She was sitting on the leather sofa, curled up with a blanket staring into the unlit fireplace. She looked up when I entered. Her eyes were still red, but the panic was gone. She looked safe, but she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the man standing by the window. Cyrus. But this was not the Cyrus she knew. This was not the man in the stained coveralls who spent his days on his knees pruning hydrangeas. This was not the silent servant who took orders with a nod and a grunt. Cyrus was standing looking out at the moonlit garden. He was wearing a tuxedo. It was not a rental. It was bespoke, cut to fit his broad shoulders perfectly. The fabric was midnight blue, the lapels were silk, and his shoes shone like black mirrors. He held a crystal glass in his hand, swirling the dark red liquid with the easy grace of a man who has held power in his palm for decades. Nia looked at me, then back at him. She was confused. Her brain was trying to reconcile the gardener with the gentleman. "Dad," she whispered, pointing a trembling finger. "Why is Cyrus wearing that? And is that Gavin's wine?" I walked over to the liquor cabinet. I saw the empty bottle sitting on the silver tray. It was a 1982 Petrus, Gavin's prized possession. He had bought it at an auction for $5,000 and had sworn that he would open it on the day I died. I picked up a glass and poured myself a generous measure. "It is not Gavin's wine, Nia," I said, taking a sip. "It is our wine. Gavin just kept it warm for us." I walked over to the window and stood next to Cyrus. We stood shoulder to shoulder, two old lions surveying our kingdom. Cyrus took a sip. He closed his eyes, savoring the taste. Notes of blackberry and tobacco, he said, his voice smooth and cultured. "A bit pretentious for my taste. I prefer a good bourbon. But it tastes decent when you drink it for free." Nia sat up, letting the blanket fall. "I don't understand," she said. "Dad, you said Cyrus was an old friend. You said he needed a job. You said he had nowhere else to go, so you let him live in the cottage." I chuckled. It was a low rumble in my chest. "I lied, baby girl." I looked at Cyrus. He nodded, giving me permission. "Cyrus didn't need a job," I said. "And he certainly didn't need a cottage. I turned to face my daughter. Nia, meet the second largest shareholder of Freeman Construction. Nia's jaw dropped. What she breathed. Cyrus owns 10% of the company, I said. He has owned it for 30 years. Every time we poured concrete for a skyscraper, Cyrus got a check. Every time we sold a housing block, Cyrus got a check. I pointed to the man in the tuxedo. He is not a gardener, Nia. He is a multi-millionaire. If he wanted to, he could buy Gavin's parents' house and burn it down for sport. Nia stood up, walking slowly toward him. She looked at his hands, the rough, scarred hands that held the expensive crystal. But why, she asked, why the overalls? Why the dirt? Why let Gavin treat you like a servant? I saw him yell at you last week because the hedges weren't straight. He called you the help. Cyrus turned from the window. His face was solemn. The shadows hid the scars on his arms, but they couldn't hide the pain in his eyes. It wasn't about the money, Miss Nia, Cyrus said softly. It was never about the money. He walked over to the fireplace and placed his glass on the mantel. 30 years ago, I was a different man. I was loud. I was ambitious. I was your father's enforcer. When people didn't want to pay us, I made them pay. When unions tried to squeeze us, I squeezed back. I lived fast. I drove fast cars. I wore suits like this every day. He paused, looking down at his missing finger. And I had a family, a wife named Sarah, and a little boy named Marcus. The room went still. I knew this story. I carried the weight of it just as he did. I made enemies. Cyrus continued. Powerful enemies. People who didn't like that a black company was taking over the city contracts. One night, they came for me. But I wasn't home. He took a deep breath. They burned my house down. Sarah and Marcus, they didn't make it out. Nia covered her mouth with her hand. Oh God, Cyrus, I am so sorry. After the funeral I died too, Cyrus said. The man I was, the ambitious man. He burned in that fire with them. I didn't want the money. I didn't want the power. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to put a gun in my mouth and end it. He looked at me, a look of profound gratitude. But your father wouldn't let me. He found me in a motel room with a bottle of whiskey and a pistol. He didn't preach to me. He didn't tell me it would get better. He just took the gun away. He told me that I couldn't die because he couldn't build the empire alone, I said, picking up the story. I told him that if he wanted to hide from the world, he could hide in my backyard. I told him I needed someone to watch my back, someone who didn't care about money. Cyrus nodded. So I became the gardener, he said. I found peace in the dirt. Plants don't lie, plants don't steal. You put a seed in the ground, you water it, and it grows. It is honest work. It healed me. He looked at Nia. And then you came along, Miss Nia. You were just a toddler. You used to follow me around the garden asking questions about the bugs and the flowers. You reminded me of Marcus, watching you grow up, protecting you. That gave me a reason to wake up in the morning. Nia was crying openly now. She walked over to him and hugged him. It wasn't the polite hug of an employer to an employee. It was a hug of family. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for watching over us. Cyrus patted her back awkwardly. I promised your father I would always be the shadow, he said. Gavin didn't see me because he didn't think a man in overalls could be dangerous. He looked at my clothes and saw a servant. He never looked at my eyes. That was his mistake, I said, raising my glass. Cyrus pulled away from Nia and picked up his wine. He thought he was the smartest man in the room, Cyrus said with a small smile. He thought he was playing chess with a senile old man. He didn't know he was playing against a grandmaster and his knight. Nia wiped her eyes and laughed, a genuine laugh. So the 10%, she asked. It is in a trust, Cyrus said, for the orphanage downtown, the one your father supports. I don't touch the money. I have everything I need right here. A warm cottage, a garden to tend, and a family to protect. He took a sip of the wine and made a face. Although I have to say Gavin had terrible taste in wine. This tastes like overpriced vinegar. We all laughed. The sound filled the library, chasing away the last shadows of the night. So, what happens tomorrow? Nia asked. Tomorrow, I said, walking over to the desk and sitting down in my chair, the leather creaking familiarly. Tomorrow, Cyrus puts his overalls back on. The roses need pruning before the frost sets in. "And you?" Cyrus asked, looking at me. I picked up a pen. "I have a company to run," I said, "and I have a mortgage to collect on. Gavin's parents are going to be sending their first check next week. I want to frame it." Cyrus finished his drink and set the glass down. "I better get back to the cottage," he said. "I have an early start. The weeds don't wait for anyone, even millionaires." He walked to the door, moving with the silent grace that had made him such a terrifying force in the basement. "Good night, sir," he said. "Good night, Miss Nia." "Good night, Cyrus," I said. He left the room. Nia sat on the edge of the desk looking at the door where he had vanished. I never knew, she whispered. All these years, I never knew. "That is the point, baby girl," I said, reaching out to hold her hand. "Real power doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't need a stage. Real power is silent. It is patient, and it is always, always watching." I looked at the empty bottle of wine. "Gavin wanted to be a king," I said, "but he forgot the most important rule of the kingdom." "What is that?" Nia asked. I smiled. "Never underestimate the man who cuts your grass, because he is the one holding the blade." The smell of roasted chicken and rosemary filled the house. It was a simple smell, a smell that had been missing from these halls for too long. For months, the air here had been thick with the scent of fear and the metallic tang of betrayal. But tonight, the air was clean. I sat at the head of the dining table. To my right sat Ruby. She was thinner than she used to be, and her hands still trembled slightly when she lifted her glass, but her eyes were clear. The fog of the drugs had lifted, revealing the woman I had fallen in love with 50 years ago. She looked at me and smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. To my left sat Nia. She had cut her hair. It was a sharp bob, now professional and serious. She looked older, not in years, but in wisdom. The naivety that Gavin had exploited was gone, replaced by a quiet strength. She wasn't just my daughter anymore, she was my partner. And opposite me at the other end of the table sat Cyrus. He wasn't wearing his tuxedo tonight, and he wasn't wearing his coveralls. He was wearing a simple cashmere sweater that Nia had bought him for his birthday. He looked comfortable. He looked like he belonged. We ate in a comfortable silence, the kind that only exists between people who have walked through fire together and come out the other side. There was no need for small talk. We knew each other's hearts. Ruby reached out and touched my hand. Her skin was papery but warm. "Zeke," she said softly. "Yes, my love." "Did you finish the work downstairs?" she asked. I nodded, taking a sip of water. "I finished it today," I said. "The concrete is drying." Nia looked up from her plate. "You filled it in?" she asked. "The command center." I wiped my mouth with a napkin. "I didn't just fill it in," I said. "I transformed it." I thought back to the work I had done over the last week. I had gone down there with a sledgehammer. I had smashed the server racks. I had torn down the wall of monitors. I had ripped out the wires that had spied on my family. It felt good. It felt like exorcising a demon. Then I had called a crew. My crew. Men I had worked with for decades. We poured fresh concrete over the floor, burying the secrets of Project Sunset forever. We painted the walls a bright, cheerful yellow. We brought in soft carpets and toy chests. "It is not a war room anymore," I told them. "It is a playroom." "A playroom?" Ruby asked, tilting her head. "For who, Zeke? We don't have any babies." I looked at Nia. She blushed slightly, but she smiled. "Not yet," I said, "but we will. And when they come, I don't want them playing in a house built on secrets. I want them playing in a house built on joy." Cyrus raised his glass. "To the future," he said. "May it be loud and messy and full of children." To the future, we all echoed, clinking our glasses. The sound of the crystal ringing was pure. It didn't sound like the shattered glass of the party. It sounded like a bell tolling for a new beginning. After dinner, we moved to the living room. I lit a fire in the fireplace. The flames danced, casting long shadows on the walls. Ruby sat in her armchair, knitting a scarf. Nia was reading a book. Cyrus was playing a game of chess with himself on the small table by the window. I sat back and watched them. This was it. This was the wealth I had fought for. It wasn't the $50 million in the bank. It wasn't the buildings with my name on them. It was this moment. This safety. I thought about Gavin. I wondered what he was doing right now, probably sitting in his cell listening to the sounds of men screaming in the dark. I wondered if he missed the taste of wine. I wondered if he missed the feeling of silk sheets. But mostly I wondered if he finally understood the mistake he had made. He thought power was about controlling people. He thought it was about moving pieces on a board until you won. He didn't understand that true power is about serving people. It is about standing in the rain so the people you love can stay dry. I looked at Cyrus. He felt my gaze and looked up. "What are you thinking about, sir?" he asked. "I am thinking about the price of freedom, Cyrus," I said. He nodded slowly, moving a black knight on the board. "The price is high," he said. "It is vigilance," I said. "It is never sleeping with both eyes closed. It is knowing that the wolf is always at the door, even if he is wearing a suit and calling you Dad." Ruby stopped knitting. She looked at me over her reading glasses. "But we are safe now, Zeke," she said. "The wolf is gone." I smiled at her. "Yes, my love, the wolf is gone, but we will keep the gate locked, just in case." Nia closed her book. "I learned something, Dad," she said quietly. "What did you learn, baby girl?" "I learned that family isn't just blood," she said, looking at Cyrus. "And loyalty isn't just doing what you are told. Loyalty is telling someone the truth even when it hurts. Loyalty is protecting someone even when they don't know they are in danger." I stood up and walked over to the window. I looked out at the garden. The frost was melting. The first green shoots of spring were pushing through the soil. "You are right," I said. I turned back to face them. My family. My army. "We built a fortress here," I said. "But a fortress is only as strong as the soldiers inside it. We survived because we didn't break rank. We survived because when the enemy tried to divide us, we got closer." I walked over to Ruby and kissed her forehead. "I am tired, old man," she teased, patting my cheek. "Help me up to bed." I helped her stand. She leaned on me heavy and trusting. "Good night, everyone," she said. "Good night, Mom," Nia said. "Good night, Mrs. Ruby," Cyrus said. I walked her to the stairs. We climbed them slowly, step by step. "You know Zeke," she whispered as we reached the landing. "I never doubted you. Even when my mind was foggy. Even when the drugs made me confused. Somewhere deep down I knew you would come for me." I stopped and looked at her. "I will always come for you, Ruby," I said. "Even if I have to burn the whole world down to find you." She squeezed my hand. "I know," she said. "That is why I married you." I tucked her into bed. I watched her fall asleep. Her breathing was steady and deep. No drugs, just peace. I went back downstairs. Nia and Cyrus were still there. They were talking quietly, laughing about something. I stood in the doorway for a moment, just listening. This was the victory. Not the arrest, not the money. This laughter. I walked to the fireplace and threw another log on the fire. Sparks flew up into the chimney. "I'm going to retire," I said suddenly. The room went silent. "Retire?" Nia asked. "For real this time." "For real," I said. "I am done with boardrooms. I am done with contracts. I am done with fighting." I looked at Nia. "You are the CEO now," I said. "You run the company. You build the buildings." "Me?" she asked, her eyes wide. "But Dad, I am a lawyer." "You are a free man," I said. "You have the blood, and you have the journals. You know everything I know." I looked at Cyrus. "And you have the best advisor in the city," I said, pointing to him. Cyrus smiled. "I will make sure she doesn't hire any consultants with slick hair," he said. I laughed. "Good. That is all I ask." I walked to the door. "Where are you going?" Nia asked. "I am going to the garden," I said. "The moon is full. I want to see the roses." I walked out into the night air. It was crisp and cold. I walked down the stone path to the rose bushes that Cyrus had tended so carefully. I stood there alone in the dark. I touched the petals of a yellow rose. It was soft like velvet. I thought about the journey, the subway station, the basement, the courtroom, the jail. It had been a long, hard road, but I had walked it, and I was still standing. I looked up at the stars. They say you can't take it with you when you die. And they are right. You can't take the money, you can't take the house, but you can leave something behind. You can leave a legacy of strength. You can leave a lesson about dignity. You can leave a standard that your children will have to live up to. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the scent of wet earth and victory. I am Ezekiel Freeman. I am a builder. I am a father. I am a husband. And tonight, I am the guardian of this garden. And no weeds are ever going to grow here again. Not on my watch. In a world obsessed with appearances, we often mistake silence for weakness and gray hair for incompetence. But true power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits patiently in the shadows. We spend our lives building castles for our loved ones, forgetting that the wolves often come dressed in silk, holding the hands of those we cherish most. Protecting your legacy isn't just about financial planning, it is about emotional vigilance. Trust is a currency. Don't spend it all in one place, and never give the combination to your safe to someone who hasn't helped you carry it up the stairs. We must learn to look past the surface. A rough hand often holds more love than a manicured one. A silent gardener may be a loyal knight, while a charming prince may be a thief in disguise. Listen to the actions, not the words. And when your gut tells you something is wrong, listen to it. It is the voice of your ancestors warning you to close the gate. Be kind, but be sharp. Be generous, but be guarded. And love your family fiercely enough to protect them, even from themselves. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that it is never too late to fight for what is yours. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps me share more stories like this one. And I want to know, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have forgiven Gavin, or would you have done exactly what I did? Let me know in the comments below. And tell me where you are listening from. I love seeing our community grow all around the world. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and never let anyone take your crown. Goodbye for now.